We acknowledge the Yagara and Kaurna nations as traditional custodians of the land on which we work, live and learn, and their continuing connection with the land, waters and community. We pay our respects to them and their elders past and present.
All content related to this program is for general informational purposes only and contains stories and discussions around mental health that may be disturbing to some listeners. If you are concerned about yourself or someone you know, please seek professional individual advice and support. More details are contained in our show notes.
Thanks for calling. Your call is important to us. An assessor from the Federal Office for Deconstruction and Dream Busting will be with you soon. We know it can be frustrating waiting for a long time, but remember, our assessors are people too, and they deserve your respect. Any threats will result in an immediate termination of the call. You have progressed in the queue. Thanks for holding.
Federal Office for Deconstruction and Dream Busting, Cynic speaking.
Oh, hi. My name's Hopeful, and I'm calling to check on a grant application I made for my new business.
Hopeful, yeah, I think I remember your application. Hang on. Yep, here we go. You're starting a business taking elderly clients out on day trips.
Yes! Change in environment does wonders for people. And just because we get older doesn't mean we don't still like to visit the places we've always loved.
Not really sure this is going to be a winning idea, to be honest.
But
where's the actual market for this? Why wouldn't the families just take them out?
well, it's not always as simple as that. Sometimes the family members aren't able to take their loved ones out because they're working. Or
How's the conversation going to go when you waltz up to someone and say, hey, I can see you're neglecting your mum, let me take her out to the beach?
it's not like that.
And who's paying for these day trips?
Well, the client would pay a heavily subsidised fee.
Right, so you want the government to pay you to take old people to the beach?
Well, when you put it like that,
We're not going to be able to support you on this one, but do apply again when you come up with a more innovative idea. Thanks for calling. Federal Office for Deconstruction and Dream Busting, Cynic speaking.
hi, I'm ambitious and I'm calling to...
Hang on, I'll grab your file. Okay, you want to start an ebook business.
Yes!
It's been done.
Well, kind of, but my ebooks are interactive, so it's never been done like this before.
Yeah, there's probably good reason for that.
Look, I sent a link to the prototype.
I don't see how this is any better than what's already out there.
Well, the images in the ebook give full accessibility for blind people, and the links open up detailed learning sections.
You've just described an audiobook and a quick Google search. This seems like unnecessary innovation. I'll send you a rejection letter this afternoon. Thanks for calling. Federal Office for Deconstruction and Dream Busting, Cynic speaking.
Hey, I'm confident. And after my last rejection, I took on all the feedback from the assessor and submitted my new idea, but I just haven't heard anything yet.
I can see you now want to start a business for an eco-friendly mobile car wash.
Yes!
That's not exactly innovative.
Well, the last assessor said to come back with something unique, but not totally out there.
Plenty of people get their car washed. I don't think people who are looking for this kind of convenience are really going to care if it's environmentally friendly. There's nothing more eco-friendly than rain after all. Why would they pay for something they can get for free?
But I've done my research, and plenty of people want an eco-friendly option that just isn't available in the market.
Look, I can appreciate where you're coming from, but sometimes in life you just have to be careful who you listen to and where you get your information from.
I conducted market research and acted on advice from somebody in your department. I've already taken out a business loan and people are interested in taking out a franchise. I just need an extra hand for some of the setup costs that my loan won't cover, but everyone is on board.
Well, dreaming is free, confident. You wouldn't be the first person to make a magic spreadsheet on how much money they could make and come to us saying what a great idea they've got.
But the bank...
Look, I don't review decisions, but if you want, I can flag this one for our review officers.
Well, I would very much appreciate that.
Do you get antsy confident? You'll get a confirmation letter this afternoon.
On the review outcome?
No. I'll send you a letter to confirm that your rejection will be reviewed within the next 6 months.
6 months?
You're just going to have to look at some other ways if you want to move any quicker. We'll be in touch. Thanks for your call. Oh, man, I hate this job. I should just start my own business.
Ever feel like you can't win in the battle for someone else's opinion?
We've been walking this path together for just over a year now, Andy, and it feels like we're getting some good traction in a business sense now.
Yeah, I mean, once we were able to get out of our own way and find the beliefs that support us instead of whatever old beliefs we had about ourselves, the right doors just started to open.
And our whole story keeps falling into place, even as we record fresh episodes that reminded us of wisdom people shared with us 12 months ago. It is the gift that keeps on giving.
It is. This is Reframe of Mind.
The podcast that cuts through the platitudes and gets to the core of living authentically, challenging our assumptions and improving mental health with the guidance of good science, philosophy and learning from other people's lived experiences.
And we're your hosts, Andy Leroy and Louise Poole. You know, as we go through life and try new things, we do push out of our comfort zone, and so it's natural to want to check in with others and even bounce ideas off people that we love and trust.
Yeah, it's uncomfortable out of that comfort zone, isn't it?
Oh, yeah.
But isn't it hard when we do run an idea past somebody, they can't see our vision, and then the comments that we were hoping for instead add a chink to our armour?
Now, in the last episode, we spoke to Tisha Rose, who was diagnosed with MS at age 22, and she's more recently been diagnosed with breast cancer.
You know, in the face of these health challenges, Tisha, amazing Tisha, has remained adamant that her story is one that can help other people to jump whatever hurdles are placed in front of them, wherever they are during life.
And what she had to say basically was that starts by blocking out other people's negativity.
You have to block out negative comments. You have to have a real inner confidence that the decisions you make are right for your journey.
So we're on a journey.
Yes.
17 episodes into Reframe of Mind, a series that we started putting together last year. At the same time, we started putting our business together. And it was at a time where 6 months or so after your dad had passed away, yeah?
Yeah. Yeah, it's funny, isn't it? Because grief counsellors will generally say, look, you know, for a good chunk of time after you've lost somebody important to you, don't make any major decisions.
Like...
Okay, so I'll just go on and make a business.
Like leaving your job and starting a business with me.
Yeah.
A colleague
and then
you haven't seen in 10 years.
And then making a podcast about your experience of grief. Great, okay, not major at all.
Yeah, no, it's just a minor thing. Yeah, I think at that time we were both feeling grief, like in different ways. I think grief can manifest in all sorts of different ways. For me, it was ending a 20-year radio career. That had that grief response in it because I suppose it was a 20-year relationship, you know, when you think about it.
It was. You spent all of your days and most of your nights with that partner.
I did. And, you know, one of those old industry sayings used to be, you're only as good as your last gig.
Oh, yeah, that's a lot of shit, to be honest. Like, but it just goes to show, you know, like with me and the situation I was in with my dad having passed and then the stuff that happened within my family afterwards, you know, ending that career of 20 years and then going through, you know, essentially psychological trauma around all of that and everything that was associated with it. It just goes to show that everybody has got something going on, whether they choose to share that openly or not.
Yeah, and there's always going to be somebody nearby who is willing and able to confirm your worst internalized fears.
Oh, you bet.
That you're just dreaming big and you should take a more sensible route.
One of the takeaways we got from the conversation with Tisha was that you have to be prepared to leave behind other people's opinions and perceptions about your capacity.
If you want to move forward, you have to push the mute button on those comments that might hold you back before you even try.
One story Tisha told us was about a nurse in the hospital who told her that she was actually in denial because of her positive outlook.
If anyone engaged like that, I'd just like, yep, fine, thanks. You know, I'd just shut it down because it just wasn't helpful for me. And again, that wasn't denying what my experience was. Like I had a nurse once saying, I think, you know, she might be in denial. And I'm like, I'm lying here unable to move. No denying that. But I'm just not going to deal with it in the way you think I should. Yeah, you do have to be really strong. You really have to block out what other people are thinking and really, have that inner confidence.
So I'm sensing a common theme, Andy.
Yeah, we've found plenty of those when we actually were interviewing people and re-editing them and coming out with this story.
So I think this is a good opportunity for us now, Andy, to get in there and deconstruct some of those beliefs that have been holding us back.
Yeah, maybe it's time we really and truly stopped caring so much about other people's perceptions and learned to value our own judgment instead of always putting other people's opinions ahead of our own.
And Derek McManus, who we spoke to in an earlier episode of Reframe of Mind, he was a police officer who was shot in the line of duty. He experienced this when he wanted to return to work. and other people stood in his way.
Because I'd prepared myself so well, I believe, I didn't experience the post-traumatic stress afterwards. I'd already dealt with it beforehand. If this happens, I know what I'm going to manage. I know what I need to manage. This is what I'm going to experience. I've got the skills to be able to manage that. Bang, let's go and take the risks and manage the risks. I've never actually experienced PTSD in relation to the shooting. My management, and I'm trying to be very politically careful here in how I phrase this, some of the managers at work didn't manage me returning to work as well as what I would have liked. They were putting up roadblocks. Like, I've been cleared by the psychiatrist a couple of times because I did go back for a review and just check in to make sure everything was okay, and he again cleared me. I'd also been cleared by occupational therapists, nurses, and doctors and all sorts of people physically to go back to work. And despite all that, there were still people who couldn't understand. Somebody's been shot 14 times. They've been through all that trauma. They can't come back into Star Group and be in Star Group again. It didn't make sense to them. So they were putting up roadblocks. But I didn't see that they were putting up roadblocks. I just couldn't understand why they wouldn't let me pass the tests.
So we can be prone to being affected by what other people say about us, but we've probably conditioned ourselves to perceive negative things about what others might think of us before they even offer us an opinion.
And Suzanne Mercier, imposter syndrome expert and author, told us how some of our perceptions might actually come from how we view ourselves compared to others.
Probably the biggest thing is that we will tend to give more credence to somebody externally than we will to our own judgment. We allow somebody else to define whether we're good enough, whether we deserve something, that sort of thing, instead of deciding for ourselves whether we did something well. Always can improve, but whether we did it well or not. My first instinct is that we're taught to put other people before us. That's part of the way, and again, gross generalization. It's part of the way that we're brought up. We sort of tend to have a far more external focus to make sure other people are okay. We're often the worst critic that we could possibly have, and other people, would never see us that way. And if we treated other people the way that we treat ourselves, we wouldn't have very many friends. So it's really looking at that whole self-compassion. Like, I don't have to be perfect. I am good enough. One of the things I get some of my clients to do is mirror work, which is pretty challenging, to stand in front of the mirror in whatever state of dress or undress you want to, and just start to look at yourself and say, I love you. You're amazing. I think you're fantastic. And it doesn't mean that you're better than anybody else, because it's not a comparison thing. We're all perfect in our imperfection.
Time for some trauma, Andy.
Yay! It's a trauma dump. Trauma dump.
Wait, is that the theme song for Trauma Dump?
Yeah. It's a trauma dump.
Sounds like we're about to host a game show. Coming up next on Louise and Andy's Trauma.
That's the next sketch.
What's behind
Wheel of Trauma.
Yeah. I think if we are using this episode to deconstruct why we should no longer care about what other people think of us,
Why not dive right in there? Come on.
We probably have to call ourselves out on all the things that we've cared about, how other people have thought of us and how that's influenced us, right?
I just thought of something really clever. You're about to jump in the pool.
Why is that clever?
Because his last name's Pool.
Yeah, but...
And you're about to jump into it? Anyway.
No, I don't understand what I'm...
It was clever in my mind. It's okay.
Yeah.
Doesn't have to be clever to you.
It's as good as your analogies.
Thank you. I thought so.
We kind of have to go back to the things that have made us care about what other people think of us and the stuff we're still holding on to.
Because we do tend to hold on to stuff like a hoarder. If I was a museum, here comes an analogy, I would be chock full of stuff that should have been thrown out years ago. So I think we should ease into this because there's going to be some stuff I think that comes up later in the program.
Ease into the trauma.
That's going to make us cry and going to make us angry.
I don't want to cry again on
No,
this
I don't
show.
want to cry either. This is going to be a fun program. Like stuff that can be pretty innocuous, because there's a lot of stuff that we could potentially talk about straight off the bat that's going to get us into fucking the patriarchy straight off. And I don't think either of us are there yet. And quite frankly, I don't think our audience are either.
No.
So
Okay.
Let's just talk about something simple.
What about off-the-cuff comments that people make?
Sure.
Okay,
so we're starting a business, yeah?
Yeah, we're starting the business. I told my mother what our business idea was. We're going to make a business, we're going to make podcasts, and she laughed at me.
Oh. Well, thank you, Mrs. Poole. It was my idea too. Oh, man. That's harsh.
Look, she probably didn't mean to laugh. It was. It wasn't like
They never do.
haha, you fucking idiot. It was like, okay, so you be me and I'll be mum, okay? Hello?
Hello, Mumsy. Mwah. Mwah.
Mwah.
Can I come in?
Yeah, you can. I don't know why you're coming in though. We're on the phone.
Oh, okay. You should need to change your ringtone. It sounds like a door.
Ring, ring. Oh, hello. Hello there. Have you got a job yet?
Oh, well, no. I've come up with a business idea. I'm actually going to start a business.
Oh, you're going to start a business. Yeah.
I don't know if you remember, like, years ago when I was working in Darwin, I had a colleague called Andy.
I don't remember because you never told me anything, no.
Oh,
Yeah.
probably. And you know how I don't remember stuff anyway. So anyway, I used to work with Andy in Darwin and we're actually going to start a business together.
Oh, yeah. Okay. Yeah.
Yeah.
What are you going to do?
Well, we're going to make content for people. Like,
Sorry.
gonna make
Do people
content
pay for that? How are you going to make money from that?
well, people do pay you for that. And there are lots of people out there making money out of making things like podcasts and doing things on social media. So, it's actually a very quite legitimate
good?
business.
Yeah, cats are good?
Cats are fine.
How's
Baby's
the
a
dog?
bit sick,
Dog's good?
but, she's great.
Anyway,
Stop it.
I'm going to let you go, okay? All right.
Oh, yeah, okay,
See you later.
all right.
See you later.
Bye. Well, that went well.
That was fucking harsh for, I'm pretty sure she doesn't listen to the podcast, but
Yeah, we'll know.
we'll know after that.
Hello, Mrs. Poole.
Love you, Mum. But the thing
She
is,
does.
she didn't mean for it to. I
No,
know
look.
she didn't mean to laugh at my business idea, but the thing is that it hurt. It was a gut instinct that she kind of had because
I know.
I don't know if it was because it was my idea or because no one was,
I think it's a thing.
I don't know, but it felt like she definitely didn't believe in me, and I would say it's kind of still a thing, considering almost every conversation is about, have you got a real job yet? So
Yeah. Look, not being a parent myself, I don't know whether that maybe is a thing that parents do in general to their kids because they have certain dreams set up in their mind for what their kid might do. And when the kid comes and says, I'm going to be, I don't know, a fireman, they go, oh, no. Because I remember, like, when I said to my dad years ago when I quit my science degree, because I hated it. it. I said to him, I actually want to be an actor. And he went, really?
are we going to reenact your dad here?
I don't think we need to.
No.
I think I just did.
Oh.
I don't know. Maybe it's one of those things that parents do. Like, I remember even when I was about 10 and we were driving Grandma home and the conversation was like, oh, what do you want to be when you grow up? And I went, oh, I think I want to be a teacher, actually. I think I'd really like to be a teacher. And she said, oh, you don't want to be one of them. They don't get paid very much. Mm-hmm. Maybe it's just one of those hereditary dream-busting genes that come down the chain.
Maybe your grandma had a job at the Federal Department of Dream Busting and whatever. What was it called?
Yeah, the Federal Department for Deconstruction and Dream Busting.
Yes, I think that was what she was moonlighting in her spare time. Do you know
Grandma could have actually managed that place on her ear.
Not to distract from your story of people not believing in you with a story of mine of people not believing in me. But I had a big thing for music, like loved music, loved listening to the radio when I was a kid, had my little, my ghetto blaster. I had my ghetto blaster, which, I don't know, now I'm saying those words out loud is actually probably offensive.
Kind of dates you.
It does date me, but it was it was a cassette player. It wasn't even a CD player, and it had my two
speakers. Did you carry it around on your shoulder?
And I carried it around, and it took like double D batteries, like it took a whole heap of double D batteries. Anyway,
that was in the day before headphones, kids.
But I used to take it with me everywhere because I used to listen to the radio, I used to listen to my Salt and Pepper CD, my Salt and Pepper cassettes, my Boys to Men cassettes, on my Ghetto Blaster, which now I think about it is really racist.
Oh.
And my father said, he would always say, what are you doing taking that with you, you know? Listening to music is never going to fucking amount to anything. Like, you're never going to, just wasting your time doing that.
Well, hello, Ms. Music Producer for Commercial Radio.
I did become a music director, guys.
Music Director.
Yeah. I did become a music director. Also, sorry, while I'm still shitting on my parents in this, I used to have a lot of things taped on VHS because it was VHS when I was a kid. And I used to watch like all my favourite movies and stuff on VHS. And so I had too many and I used to watch them all the time. And I came home, I think, from school one day and they'd all been thrown out.
Harsh.
Or taped over. Can you believe they taped over one of my movies with like a royal tattoo special, right? Like it was like the Edinburgh royal tattoo. Like they taped,
and it wasn't even Tattoo from Fantasy Island.
Like they taped over, I don't know, Chitty Chitty Bang Bang with the royal tattoo.
Oh,
I was something like that. Anyway, I was so upset. Where are all my tapes? Where are all my tapes? Watching all this TV is never going to amount to anything. The other job I had was watching TV for a living.
There you go.
Yeah.
2 for 2.
So yeah, I have worked in media all my life. First big job was literally watching TV for a living. Second job was listening to music.
I think it's really important, to come in at that point and say that it's probably not great to listen to everybody. I mean, we're not actually saying kids don't listen to your parents because it's good to listen to your parents, not all the time though.
Yeah, I mean, you might not actually be saying don't listen to your parents, but I certainly am saying don't listen to your parents.
Look, it would have been helpful for me not to have listened to my dad laughing at me with that particular aspiration.
They mean well.
He came good later on though, like he would say to me later in life, maybe this will lead to a gig or something like that. So it all got resolved. But, there was a teacher that I had in high school and after I quit the school band that he was building, because, I don't know, that's a whole other story, but
about you faking to play the trumpet?
About me faking to play the baritone sax.
It, yes. I knew we were both faking instruments. I couldn't remember yours.
Yeah, I was totally faking it. But and someone said to me, just do the fingering because, until you kind of learn it, that's okay. Just practice the fingering.
Yeah, you never practice the fingering though, and that's part of the story later on.
I know. Anyway, I decided to quit the band because I didn't like it. And it sounded tacky. It sounded terrible in my opinion and I'd had enough. And anyway, at that point, this teacher who ran the band also did the school productions, obviously.
Like
and
theatre?
then said, well, yeah. Well, you were a shit actor anyway and blah, 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 blah. This was years before my dad laughed at me. So I've got these compounding things as to why I should not do anything, A, theatrical or, B, really creative at all because I've got, the teacher saying I'm shit. I've got dad laughing at me saying when I want to be an actor and, all those other competitive things happening in high school as well of me not being as good as my peers who are very competitive in things like English and me then feeling like, okay, well, why should I even bother?
Yeah. For somebody who didn't feel very competitive in English, you managed to write a novel, though. Yeah,
I've still got 50 copies of a novella that I haven't sold, like I might have written it and self-published it, but I certainly didn't go out and promote it. Why would anybody want to buy a trite little story I wrote nearly 10 years ago?
I mean, you could buy it on our Patreon, though. We've got it up for sale. It'll help Andy move some boxes. And maybe move some beliefs that, his story wasn't worth reading, which is not true.
Why would I go on and complete 3 full novels into draft form if nobody wanted to buy the novella?
Why would you?
I don't know. I love writing. I love writing.
Yeah.
You know that I can bang out something pretty quickly and usually, it's pretty good by both of our opinions. I don't kind of dilly-dally too much. I'm pretty efficient with the tool, except for when I write analogies. But
So what you're saying is that you wrote a novella that you self-published 10 years ago.
9 years. I haven't hit the 10-year anniversary yet.
You didn't tell anybody. You barely told anybody you did it.
I barely told anybody I did it. It's in the library, so you could probably find it in the library. You can find it on Amazon, but don't do that. Just buy it from me directly if you're going to buy it because I'll actually see the money for it.
And then after you didn't tell anybody about the novella that you self-published, you wrote 3 sequels to it that you haven't published.
Actually, so the first one I wrote, the first novel that I wrote was actually a prequel to it.
Oh, sorry. It was a
That's
prequel.
Okay.
Yeah.
It was a prequel to the novella.
That doesn't make it any better. Saying it was a prequel doesn't change the fact that you've put in all this work into something that is quite good and imposter syndrome has come along and said, no one wants to see that.
It's like when we're starting the business, like to go out and put a book out is actually quite a big feet. Even someone who is published through one of the major publishers, it's not a case of getting picked up by a publisher and woohoo, suddenly you're a best-selling author. They've really got to work to promote their book. They've got to do a lot of stuff behind the scenes to get it out there, which, I guess is normal.
Anyone in a business, has got to do,
So I really enjoyed drafting them. They really need an edit, and it would be great to release them one day. But I guess, my business mind says, what's the cost-benefit analysis on that? Do you really think people are going to buy those books?
Do you know what I really enjoyed?
What did you enjoy?
Making a whole heap of jewellery and setting up a business and
your jewellery's really cute.
Designing little cards, that would have things on there and taking photos and doing some social media posts and, telling people about what I did. And it was really cute and really enjoyed that.
I'm guessing it was an amazing success. The jewellery was great.
I enjoyed the part where I made the jewellery and I made the cards and I did the website and I did the social media. And that's where that story ends because I think I went to one or two things, tried to sell it, didn't, got like one order online, got it in like one business, and I think in the end I just went, it's too hard. Now I have a whole shed full of jewellery, literally.
Oh, wow.
It's like my
Between
shed.
your shed of jewellery and my novellas.
Oh, we could make quite the bookstore that sells accessories.
We could make a little side business for ourselves to the business that is still gaining traction.
We don't need to know the business. I think, though, the thing with the jewellery is I really did enjoy that. I battled at the time, I was dating someone who actually, in the history of bad people that I've dated, did say things to me like, why would you do that? Like, other people sell this kind of stuff. Why are you bothering? Like, this is not going to make you a millionaire. And it's like, well, everybody starts with an idea that hasn't made them a millionaire yet, but and maybe the jewellery never was going to make me a millionaire. But
was Coco Chanel a millionaire when she put her first drop of eau de parfum?
That probably didn't help the situation with me believing in it. I enjoyed making it. I'm a very creative person. I actually really enjoyed gluing all the bits together and kind of putting all that together. And then when it come to the telling people about it got really overwhelming really quickly because I wasn't seeing immediate results. I didn't hit publish on my website and suddenly was overrun with orders. It was, much like it is in getting listeners for a podcast and the start when you don't have a big network behind you. It's a grind for every listener because
I think every business is.
Every business is a grind until it kind of gets enough momentum that it's not, till other people start doing the work for you, but you've got to put in a lot of work before you get there. And so my shed is full of little tiny cat earrings and necklaces that look like sushi, and I think some records, rock and roll records. Look, it's very cute. Not available for sale. Could put it on Patreon though.
I reckon if I can put my novellas onto Patreon, you can put your earrings on there.
I could put my shed earrings on Patreon.
Put your shed earrings on Patreon.
They've been in little plastic containers, so they should be safe from any flood water.
You didn't float, so...
No, I didn't float, but,
No.
The bottom of the shed might have been a bit wet.
Yeah, okay.
I tell you what, on Patreon, we'll put the earrings from the top of the shed.
Okay.
The stuff that the stuff that was on the top. How about that? That is our Patreon
Undamaged
guarantee.
Earrings. Undamaged earrings and a copy of the novella.
Yeah. Why did we start a business, Andy? Why have we started a business? You write novels that you don't tell anybody about, and I make jewellery that I don't tell anybody about.
Well, I think we kind of made this assumption that, okay, if there's somebody doing it with us, we're like a team and we can do it because it's almost like we're working for someone else.
Yeah. That's
kind of the picture I had in my mind anyway. It's okay, like I'll have Louise and I'm kind of reporting to Louise, so it's just like a job and we'll get stuff done.
We do get stuff done. We've certainly gathered a lot of evidence to support our beliefs that nobody would want what we do along the way. We've got that done.
Yeah, we have. There's always an opportunity for that. Never miss an opportunity.
Never miss an opportunity. I think we might have done enough shitting on ourselves for this section of the podcast.
Trauma dump.
Because a lot of that is to do with our own opinions of ourself and our self-worth. And, some of that is definitely beliefs that we've picked up from other people. And, people do have the best intentions in mind when they tell us things like that, Don't waste your time on this because... ... They're trying to help. It's just not very helpful.
They're trying to be helpful. They want to give some advice so that you don't make mistakes and don't end up in a flap.
Dinesh Palapana, he's not in a flap.
He's not. He was the 2021 Queensland Australian of the Year.
Yes, definitely not in a flap. We spoke to him earlier in the series. He told us he learned some really big lessons about challenging other people's perceptions.
Dinesh became disabled after a serious car accident when he was studying at university, but he then went on to become Australia's second quadriplegic medical graduate, and the first with a spinal cord injury. One of the things that stood out was the challenge you faced around other people's perceptions of what you're capable of in this. Was that something that you didn't expect when you were actually trying to deal with everything else that you were dealing with?
There are many facets to that, actually, because I've got to say that before I had the injury, I had no idea what life was like for someone with a disability, right? So I didn't know. And when I used to look at someone using a wheelchair, I just thought, okay, that must be difficult having paralysis, because you see the physical thing, right? But the problem goes a lot deeper than that. There's problems with lung function, there's problems with skin, there's problems with gastrointestinal function, and then there's all these other social things like employment and education and discrimination that goes on. So I had no idea about the breadth of the challenges that people face. And I think most people don't really realize that either. So when I first had the injury, it was suddenly a very steep learning curve about all these things that were an issue. And even within myself, I wasn't sure what my capabilities would be, and I wasn't sure what I would be able to do. So even in my own head, I had some doubts about what life would look like and what my capabilities are. So if I had those doubts, then other people had all these things in their minds as well. So a lot of people told me, even some of my close friends said, I think medical school is going to be really hard for you. I think this journey is probably something that you don't want to take, and you should think about doing something a bit easier. So there were a lot of things from even people close to me that weren't so enabling for me to take the journey. But there's one thing, and that is in our lives, we have so many people having an opinion about what we should do. And there are social pressures as well. At the end of the day, when you look back at life, when you're at the end of the road, there's only one person who you can hold to account, and that's you. Some people have the best intentions for us, but at the same time, I think we can appreciate them and we can think about the input, because all viewpoints are worth considering because we can learn something from it. I think it's really important to remember that this is not a rehearsal. Life is happening and you only get one shot at it. We all see time passing by so quickly, right? We're like, oh my God, how quick's the year gone? And suddenly you're at a point where you're looking back and go, oh my God, I missed so much of life. So in all those times, are the people that told you what to do and what not to do, are they there? They're not. It's just you. So that's really the thought that kept me going, because I knew that in a few years, all these people, they won't be around and they'll just be living their own lives. So why should I listen to that? So you got to carve out your own life. You have to remember that to be happy, truly happy, you can't get caught up in the cogs and wheels of society, and you can't get thrown into the passing fancies of the world and whatever's fashionable at the moment. You just got to do what makes you happy and what makes you fulfilled, and to pursue your why. If you do that, I think most of us will end up in a pretty good place, and that's happiness.
So this thing that Dinesh is saying about finding your why and doing what makes you happy, I think both of us probably found that pretty early in life, but other people's opinions jaded that, yeah? And I think a lot of the decisions that we make are based on opinions about ourselves that we form way, way before we want to make these decisions. They happen bit by bit over years or decades, related to our self-worth.
Like even people that don't mean to affect us in negative ways. I mean, I can remember this teacher, year 2, Louise. So what is that? 7, 8 at most. This is gonna date me.
Do we need the harp?
No, we don't need the harp for this. We need the time machine because we had tidy trays.
Oh, I remember tidy trays.
You remember tidy trays?
I remember tidy trays.
Yeah, okay.
Get out. You still had tidy trays.
We had tidy trays. And so we had tidy trays for ourselves and our own stuff, but we also had tidy trays to put things away. So I remember in this one particular class in year 2, we were doing like arts and craft. And at the end of the lesson, the teacher says, you know, go put everything back in the tidy trays. And so I was at the straw pile. So little, they were like 2 centimetre long little red straws. I know. Lots of details from my history aren't very clear. The ones surrounding trauma are, apparently. Go figure. Our neuroscientists can tell us this, the answers to these. So I thought if all these straws, there was a lot of straws on the table, if all these straws had to go to the tidy trays on the other side of the room, I could like stick them in my pockets and take more of them over there in one trip, because we all know how no one likes to carry 2 bags, make 2 trips for groceries, right? So think of that, but with straws when you're in year 2.
7-year-old Louise had an efficiency epiphany.
Right. So I stick these plastic straws into the pockets of my little pinafore dress. It was gingham, by the way, little blue gingham number.
Of course it was.
With a zip down the front that the boys used to always undo at lunchtime, which...
No.
Yeah.
It starts early.
So inappropriate.
Yeah.
But that's a story for another episode. So I stuck them in and I start to walk over. I think she saw me sticking them in my pockets. And she starts yelling at me in front of everybody in class about how I'm stealing straws. Why are you're stealing these straws. These are for everybody. You shouldn't be stealing these straws. That's,
What? Awkward. I mean, I hope she was embarrassed at her wrong call.
Well, I never got to tell her it was a wrong call because she thought I was stealing straws. I felt humiliated. Like I felt
Of course you did.
I actually, telling the story now, like honestly, my face still feels a little bit red because this early memory I have is I know that I wasn't doing anything wrong. I was trying to help, but I was embarrassed and humiliated and shamed and then I started to think, did I? And what was I stealing straws? Like,
You started to question yourself.
Yeah, what did I?
She gaslit you.
She gaslit me over straws. I can so clearly remember this. Like I feel ashamed of putting straws in my pocket to take them over to the tidy tray. I feel ashamed and humiliated by that. Still, even though I know I was just trying to find the most efficient way of transporting stuff, and also, and now that I'm 40 and not 7 years old, they were 2 centimetre fucking plastic straws. Why would anybody want to steal them?
Well, maybe Barbie was thirsty at home.
There was no shortage of plastic straws available in the 80s. Why would I want to steal a handful of plastic straws?
Well, maybe you were selling them on the black market in the playground.
What, for miniature tiny drinks?
Like, were your friends snorting dust from the playground through short straws at recess?
And also, now seeing I'm on my high horse here, why was I humiliated for stealing plastic straws when little fucking boys were running around undoing my front zip and no one called them out?
I know, right? And you hadn't even stolen them yet in her story. Like, you were just putting them in your pocket.
When does the act of stealing happen? Right? Like, is it if you're walking around a shop and, like, you put something in your basket, is that stealing because it's no longer on the fucking shelf? You don't go to Aldi. You use your reusable bags at Aldi and you start to put, like, your milk in your esky bag and they go, you fucking stole that? That's in your
you stole
fucking
that
bag.
In the office. In you go, grab her, boys. She's stealing.
No, you haven't stolen it till you've taken out of the store, have you?
No. What she should have done is if she thought you were stealing, she should have eyeballed you and then, discreetly, because you don't want to humiliate anyone who's not doing anything. But she could have just observed, like a good teacher would have observed the behaviour and gone, oh, actually, that's really fucking clever. Like, there's a 7-year-old who's really fucking clever because she's actually stuffing these things into her pockets to get this done quickly because everybody wants to get the cleanup done quickly. She's also doing a massive share of the cleanup, which is difficult to get kids to do at the best of times. So here's little Louise stuffing all of these little 2 centimetre straws into her pockets to put into the tray, which she didn't even get to because I've accused her of stealing them before she even takes off.
And you know what?
She should have actually eyeballed you and then, had you not put them in the tray and then left when the bell went, tapped you on the shoulder and said, oh, excuse me, I think you've got something in your pocket. You've been stealing. Then would have been the time to do it.
And also, seeing I'm blaming her with things now, I wish I could remember her name, but I honestly can't. I could probably find an old report card and name and shame her, because that's he's a terrible teacher who would say that to someone in year 2. But also, I'm going to go ahead and blame her for the fact that I hardly ever clean my house now because I got in trouble for doing it once.
Yeah, there you go.
I'm shit at cleaning because it might get me in trouble.
Exactly. You're going to do it wrong and it's
Why bother?
going to get you in trouble anyway.
Did you get yelled at by a teacher and cause your first memory of shame there, Andy?
No, I don't remember any shame stories. I do remember a teacher in primary school who was very vocal and would sometimes throw chairs around the room, throw furniture
Was
around.
that the same one that told you that you wouldn't be an actor?
No. This was years before. This one would bring kids who were in trouble in front of the class and cane them in front of the class.
Oh, that's even worse.
Yeah, that was very traumatising. I've spoken to people fairly recently who also had that teacher, and they're still traumatised by it. They still feel really angry about that period of our lives.
They have a right to feel that way. Like, I mean...
Yeah, of course.
Think about
like it was scary. Like I was 8 years old in
Yeah.
that classroom seeing someone get caned and then, the teacher losing his temper and going with his desk and upending his desk and throwing a chair across the room and that was no fun.
So fun. Lol. Best day ever. Hashtag. Hashtag those were the days. Take me back.
And then I would go home and I would not want to go to school, and then Mum would say, you've got to go to school, of course, because I've got to go to school. And then one morning I was going to school into this class. This is a story that cropped out of nowhere. I'm going to school. And then I was upset, and then she actually written a letter at one point to the teacher saying, maybe he needs to swap classes because he's in a tiz all the time, all that kind of stuff. So it was my fault, obviously, because I was in a tizzy all the time. Really upset, didn't want to go to school this morning, finally bit the bullet and knew that I had to go. I turned around to say goodbye to her, and in a rage, she picked up like a bit of plastic-coated wire that one of the linesmen, like from Telstra or something, had been using or something, whips me on the leg and said, go to school! And that basically fucked me up for a while.
Bit by bit, over years or decades.
Yeah.
Self-worth has been chipped away. Like the thing, I mean, I suppose it's that go-to in therapy, what's caused you to do this? And I'm like, oh, it's my father.
Probably was.
But when you're a kid and you have adults who are supposed to look after you in whatever position they're in, and whether they mean to or not, don't consider how they're reacting with you, and from your mindset and from your formative kind of plastic brain that's not set yet, that so many of these things really embed into our self-worth and really embed into the stories that we tell ourselves over and over again.
Well, like you've heard me speak before about how my family would comment about the booftas on the TV or whatever. And, so for someone who hasn't even thought about sexuality, it wasn't the thing to do in the 80s when you were growing up. You were straight. You got a girlfriend, you had a root in the ute and you, I don't know, got a pregnant, whatever, who knows, I don't know. Probably not, because that's not how my family worked. But anyway, bottom line is that you don't grow up to be a boofta, because, so to contextualise this is back in the 80s when I was in high school, so I'm a bit older than Louise, I'm 50.
But you still had a tidy tray?
I still had a tidy tray. We call them toque trays. They were toque trays in my school. So I guess now we're getting to a point where, and this is not common by any means, we've got a long way to go, but there are some places where kids can actually come out as same-sex attracted, or they can come out as trans, or they can come out as gender neutral.
Yeah.
There are different versions of people in the world.
Yeah.
Oh, hallelujah, we're finally recognising that. But in the 1980s, when I was in high school,
no.
No. So, that means then that our right to love our way isn't recognised. That means that certain rites of passage that my peers got, having a date at their farewell, that kind of thing wasn't even on my radar. I was so repressed I didn't even realise why I wasn't attracted to girls. I just thought I was a late bloomer. So, okay, yep, not attracted to girls, can't get a girlfriend. I'll just go with my mates who also don't have dates. They weren't gay. Not all of them anyway. But you know what I mean? Like that, because of these impressions that I'd formed earlier in life, it took me a long time to actually get comfortable with the fact that I was same-sex attracted.
In the 80s as well. So that kind of late 80s time we're talking about, that and early 90s, that's the conversation about AIDS as well became relentless.
Well, that Grim Reaper ad that everybody is familiar with, if you're not familiar with it, you could probably still find it. Like it's
traumatise yourself
awful.
all over again. Yeah.
That was basically when I was in year 7. So I was 13 years old when that was hitting screens, and it was traumatizing. You know, no one wanted to have sex, full stop.
Yeah.
But especially, you know, I'm going to use this word advisedly because it was a word that was used at the time, but people were calling gay men AIDS fuckers, you know, and that's not okay.
No.
It's not okay. That was so many ways it's not okay. But you get the point that I'm making is that in that whole context of society at the time, it certainly wasn't okay for me to be gay. Everything was telling me that if that was the way I was going to be, there was definitely something wrong with me.
That's fucking awful, isn't it?
Yeah.
That's fucking, that's fucking awful.
Fucked.
It's fucking awful.
Yeah, it is. But, you know, I mean, there is a happy ending to that because, you know, I'm out and I'm proud and I've got a same-sex partner and we've got a very happy life together. But I guess there are certain things that we all go through in our lives that are informed by the things we're exposed to earlier in life. So, you know, maybe if I'd been born 20 or 30 years later, there'd be other things that would be impacting on me.
Everyone's got something, I suppose, they were traumatised by, don't they? Maybe.
Yeah.
I don't know. I don't know. Maybe,
I think so.
Maybe there's actually people out there who had like a fucking fantastic childhood and were loved and supported by everybody around them and everybody always believed in them. I don't know who they are.
Yeah, they're getting harder to find because as they age, they find their traumas.
Yeah, they remember their traumas and then they do their best not to inflict them on their kids. But here we are, we're in a cycle.
So all of these things we're exposed to really feed into a loop and tell us who it's not okay to be, what it's not okay to be.
If you were not okay to be gay in the 90s and the 80s,
Apufta.
You know I don't like that word.
I know. We can talk about that later.
If you weren't okay to be a homosexual,
Yes.
I was not okay to be a fatty.
See, I was also fat, but go on.
You were a fat homosexual.
I was a fat poof.
Set the scene. In my, I've got to go back in time machine for the shame machine. We should call this like time traveling.
The shame machine.
The shame
Is this like
machine.
the hot tub? Is this like that hot tub?
Hot tub shame machine. So not long after I stole the straws and had my dress torn down by inappropriate boys who were never called out for it.
While they were snorting dust in the playground.
And also at that school, someone hit me in the back of the head with a fucking metal monkey bar and split my head open. So
Oh my God.
I know. My grandfather had to come pick me up, take me to the hospital, and I still have a fucking divot in the back of my head.
Was your school called Wentworth?
Someone clocked me in the, you know, with those swings, like the
Yeah.
like, I mean, they're not in playgrounds now because this is in the era of tidy
Because
trays.
kids got their heads cracked open, probably.
And like, you grabbed on and then you kind of swung forward and jump off. Well, I just jumped off and then like someone grabbed it and fucking swung it at the back of my head.
I was never brave enough to jump off, by the way, because I was told I was clumsy. But go ahead.
I also used to jump off the swing sets until, oh God, no, this is going to be, this is going to be an awful moment where okay, it's going to tie into fat girl though. It's going to tie into fat girl. I stopped playing on swing sets, I think, when someone said to me that the whole swing set moved when I was swinging and they thought it was going to break.
Oh.
Yeah.
Oh.
I know.
That's awful.
It's awful. Fat girl trauma. So not long after I had been accused of stealing straws, had my dress pulled down by a boy who snorted straws in the thing, got my head cracked open on the monkey bars.
Yeah.
I actually changed schools, right? Fuck, thank God.
Phew. Out of that frying pan.
Between year 3 and year 4, the girl who all those things happened to was a thin girl. But between year 3 and 4, I became a fat girl.
Oh.
I changed schools. I don't know. I ate too much candy, according to someone that we lived with at the time. And so...
They were jealous, obviously.
it was an old lady and she's like, you ate too much fucking candy. Look how fat you are.
Well, look how ugly you are. You're going to die.
You're going to die soon, bitch. Didn't live, spiteful ones always live the longest. Okay, but so between year 3 and year 4, it's the start of picking up. I mean, it's probably came before that anyway because whatever, but, that was a time where I think my body shifted and I started taking a lot of criticism from people in my life about putting on weight over the summer, the I ate too much candy summer, so that by the time I started year 4, I was getting so much shame and so much kind of bullying from a home perspective about my body. And also when I was at this new school, I was a new school, new kid, new fat kid. People weren't kind to fat kids in the 90s.
Especially the new fat kid.
And so I copped a lot of abuse and harassment for my body in the vein of...
At what age? You must be like 8 or 9 now, huh?
Yeah. I think the first diet I ever went on, I was probably about 8, honestly.
Wow.
I think the first...
That's young.
Some of the timeline of these things is blurred, but, the amount of times they bought me exercise bikes, they bought me this weird thing that you used to stand on and the belt went around you and it used to try to vibrate the weight off. I don't know. Like, that's quite an old reference.
I remember seeing those in the movies. They looked like fun.
And all it did was make me
not.
itchy.
Yeah.
We had the Heart Smart diet that I was allowed on. I had to do the one that the heart people recommended. There was the calorie counting. Everything in the house was diet food. There was don't eat too much fats.
It was all on, basically.
There's a whole other episode in here about eating disorders, and that's not this episode. However, being the fat kid means being judged for your body and not participating in things. So I recently had to go back and look at all of my old school report cards for a psychiatrist that I'm seeing for a diagnosis, which is something for a further episode, teaser alert. And she wanted me to go back and look for evidence of things earlier in life. And one of the things that I noticed consistently, it's kind of strange, it's kind of funny, ironic strange, is, it starts in like year 1, like you're doing sports and PE and it might say things like, oh, Louise is not that coordinated, needs to try harder, etc., etc. And then I can see how it goes from has got potential, needs to try harder, to as the years go on, doesn't want to be involved in sport, doesn't want to do this. One of the comments, I think it was from year 9 or year 10, it said something like, Louise needs to realise that if you want to succeed, you have to play as a team. Because I think I just used to not call in sick, but, I used to just continually have injuries that I couldn't play.
Yeah, right.
And that wasn't because I didn't like sport, and it wasn't because I didn't like moving. It was because to play sport as a fat kid came with relentless bullying. I actually really loved basketball when I was a kid and used to play it outside of school. But every time I'd run on the school courts in the short shorts they supplied you with, it was here comes fatty boomba, right?
Yeah, I've got similar experiences, like, getting picked last for the team all the time, that kind of thing happens. It happened to me to the point where, by a certain stage in high school, I would, like you, I'd avoid having to play sports. So there was actually, when they make you try out for the sports and stuff. And so I would dodge that. I found ways to dodge that. Of course I did. Of course I never wanted to play those team sports. And there was a sport, inverted commas, that was available that I got onto fairly frequently called the Asthma Swimming Club.
Yeah.
Because we just got to basically go to the pool and do a few laps and just splash about in the pool. That was as much sport as I was up for, but it was there for the asthma kids to improve their breathing. But I made the cut because I was fat and I needed to exercise. But that was good enough for me because I didn't actually want to do sport.
I'm glad you made it into the pool.
Yeah,
I didn't make it into the pool.
I love a swim. I love swimming.
Okay, so when I went back through all these old school report cards, I found a certificate of attainment. Louise has learned to swim.
Oh.
Louise has not learned to swim.
How did Louise get the certificate then that she's learned to swim?
I don't know, because Louise has not learned to swim. Because maybe Louise turned up to the classes, but Louise wouldn't wear a swimming costume in the pool in front of other kids, because if it was bad enough fat girl running at the school carnival, then fat girl swimming in a swimsuit was not going to happen. So no, Louise actually never learned to swim. Louise learned to float And Louise can paddle from one side to the other, but certainly has not attained a level of swimming that she should have a certificate for, because I didn't do it. I think at some point I managed to talk mum into, not letting me go to the swimming lessons anymore. And she probably thought I was lazy. Sometimes I felt like, I was being bullied at school for being fat, and then I was being stuck on a diet at home and being told that, I'm fat and I need to lose weight and I have no worth. Not that they ever specifically said those words, but that I felt like I didn't.
Well, the actions spoke louder than words, didn't they?
Yeah.
Like you were getting the
have
words
worth.
at school, but yeah.
Unless I was thin.
Mm-hmm.
This plays out in other ways in life. These are some really formative things. And in retrospect, I have to say, because I have dug up all those things, I've dug up that photo of that 8-year-old girl, and you know what? She wasn't fat. She wasn't fat. She was 8 years old.
That's, almost the opposite to what my parents, thankfully, would say to me when I would say that I'm too fat or whatever. And, my parents and their friends would say, it's just puppy fat, you'll lose it. It wasn't exactly the healthiest thing to say, but it wasn't shaming me for it. It was, okay, well, yeah, you might be carrying some fat there, but it's normal. They did, the point of what they were saying was you're not abnormal,
yeah,
which would have been a nice thing for you to hear.
I heard that once, actually. I had I think it was a school counsellor or a nutritionist or something like that, and this is in high school, and she did my weight and she did my height, and she said, look, yeah, you're overweight now, but, if you stay at the same weight that you are now as you kind of have a growth spurt, then it'll all even out. It'll be fine. I can't remember who in my family I told that to, but they laughed.
Yeah.
So, yeah. And then they said that, she didn't know what she was talking about. So to that one person who tried, thank you.
Yeah.
Yeah. Who tried in the time where people weren't trying.
Against a tide of people who weren't trying. Yeah.
Against a tide of people who think it's okay to tell children that they're not good enough.
So these are things that we carry into adulthood, and if we...
Not just the weight, the trauma.
Well, yeah, I mean, I see what you did there.
Yeah, I didn't...
You made light of it, didn't you?
I didn't get taller and get thinner, I'll tell you that.
Spoiler alert.
Spoiler alert, still fat.
Look at any excuse for fashion on Instagram.
Which I did think about calling any excuse for fashion as well.
Yeah, I think that you've definitely grown comfortable with your body image since those days, which is great, because to go through life and feel ashamed of how you look and other aspects, any other aspect of who you are.
Or who you love. Yeah.
Or who you love. It's something that no one should have to do. And people are very quick to judge.
Even the ones that mean well?
Even the ones that mean well. I don't know. I think a lot of the times in life we're going on autopilot. I think a lot of the times people don't really think about what they're saying and what effect that could have on other people.
And maybe it's because they were also fat kids and gay kids, and they were also othered in some way, and they think that now that's just the way things are. You've got to not other someone else, but give them a reality check so they don't get hurt.
So, okay, my grandmother on my mum's side had a German father. Sounds pretty innocuous when I say it like that in 2022. But she was born in 1907. So by the time she was 7 years old, World War I, there became a very big push against German people. Her father was, I can't remember exactly, he was either almost taken, but there was definitely an internment camp in the area for Germans. I think he might have been interned for a little while into that. That's something I'd have to check with my family. But that aside, she was othered as a child because she was of German descent.
Yeah.
So I think what happens, and I think this came out in the conversation several episodes back with Sally Goldner, is that when we're being othered, sometimes what we do is we throw other people under the bus, so it takes the attention away from us.
Yeah.
And we need to learn not to do that. We need to learn to be allies for each other rather than find something else that is going to be a distraction. I mean, we've got a Prime Minister at the moment that is the king of distractions, and it's really embedded within our culture that, well, okay, I might be doing this, but look over there, look what they're doing. Look over here. Like, don't look at me, look at them. They're worse. And people get quite self-righteous, and people can very easily throw other people under the bus who may even be so close to what's going on for them, like you'd have to listen to the episode with Sally Goldner to actually get the full conversation. But when I was coming out and I was forming friendships within gay circles, it wasn't uncommon for gay men to say stuff about trans people, or for gay women, for that matter, for people in the gay community, as it was called then. You know, we've got different names and labels now, and that's good, that's fine. But I'm speaking early 90s, so, you know, I'd hear my gay friends say derogatory stuff about trans folk. At the time, I would think that's weird because they're just as persecuted as us. Why should they be slandered, and why should they be made fun of any more than me? And I shouldn't be made fun of, so they shouldn't be made fun of. I don't know. It's just this funny thing that I was brought up with, that you just shouldn't be an asshole to people.
Yeah,
people do it all the time.
Yeah,
and yet we do it all, and we do it ourselves unconsciously.
Yeah,
it's happened within my own family. I see these patterns, and I don't even think it's conscious most of the time. I think we just follow these patterns that we just absorb as we grow up, and it's like, okay, well, I need to be in with them, so no, they're the bad people.
So if we can't stop other people having opinions, and we cannot stop other people having opinions.
No.
And we can't stop other people having their beliefs either, whatever we perceive them to be, right or wrong. As much as we'd love to.
I know. Like, I'm just thinking back to when we recorded our first episode of Elevating Experts.
Yeah.
And we asked our partners for their opinion on the episode, and they actually
shat all over us.
Well, they complimented the opposite person's partner, but shat over us. Not shat on us. That's a bit of a strong term.
Sorry,
but
shat on us.
You can say shat on. Basically went, well, person B, which is you in my case, sounded great and blah, 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 but, you know, you could do with a bit of blah, 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 blah. And then the same in reverse happened from your partner at the time to me. At the time. I'm still with mine.
So we can't stop other people from having opinions, even if we don't agree with them.
No.
Social media, right?
Oh, yeah, I know. Like, how many times have you kind of gone to hit, like, the send thing on one of those comment boxes and thought, oh, I don't know if I want to do that. You know, like, there's somewhere out there, there's a middle-aged white man living in his mother's basement.
Out there.
That we like to call trolls.
White man in his basement.
Send in the trolls. I did a comedy act about that once.
Yeah.
But, you
Both
know,
of
like
those songs, they date us. Those songs that we just...
You bet they do.
They date us.
They do, yeah. But the point is, we hold ourselves back with this fear of what other people might think and then say. Who cares what the trolls got to say?
Yeah.
It's text on a screen, and yet we receive them as personal attacks. We receive them as personal threats. And some of them are personal threats, and that's the ones that you need to report.
But most of them are just words.
Most of it just words.
Sounds like it might be a good time to listen to our chat with Suzanne Mercier then in episode 8 about the imposter syndrome, Andy.
Yeah. I mean, not only do we experience these things in real life, but think about the range of opinions and attitudes that we're bombarded with when we open our phones every day and we check in on social media, or even on news sites, or any place where someone can give an opinion, basically.
Everywhere that someone gives an opinion, which is
Everyone's got an opinion.
And you know, one of my favourite quotes, it came from a Christmas movie. Opinions are like assholes. Everyone's got one and everyone thinks everyone else's stinks. So Professor Hugh Kearns from Flinders University pointed out to us in an earlier chat a few episodes back, there comes a point where we need to do something different when it comes to other people's perceptions.
If your other people's expectations matter to you, it's going to be hard. Whereas if you go, no, I like doing it, and if you like it, that's good. If you don't, so setting your own plans or expectations for it are important. But that's a hard one in the world where you're constantly exposed to expectations. And this is where social media makes it much harder for you as well, because now you look at all those other wonderful pots that everybody else did on Instagram or whatever like that, and mine aren't as good as that. And so we're constantly showing these excellent behaviors or excellent outcomes. And that's when you have to go, look, I'm not so worried about that. I like doing this. If you accept it, that's great. If not, that's cool. I'm going to do it anyway. But it does require you to have sort of a bit of more internal focus, which is I will set the expectations of what I like doing, not all the other people around me. But it's a pretty hard one. It's a sort of a lifelong challenge to learn, I think, that one.
Well, Hugh, I think you can pop this whole conversation in the brag file because we've enjoyed this thoroughly.
I hope people don't think I was a fraud or that it wasn't good enough or whatever like that.
Pop all your credentials up and make sure they're fully aware. It's all good.
Okay, good.
Okay, so it's been a little while since Science Professor Joe Forgas from the University of New South Wales called us out on our bullshit.
No, to be fair to Joe, he didn't call it bullshit. We've called it bullshit because, it's our bullshit. But
it is our bullshit, but
yes.
What he said that we've lovingly called Joe bombs basically made us hold ourselves to account in some of the beliefs and things that we do and say. I don't think we ever set out to kind of be these bastions of wisdom and say, thou shalt not do this and thou shalt... We're as flawed as anybody else,
yes.
Like these stories that we're telling and even some of the actions that we've done ourselves have been flawed. So, join the club. But Joe's take on how the internet has suddenly given everyone a platform really got us thinking.
Well, some people use individualism as a rhetorical device, not in its proper context. But usually it's quite transparent. I mean, you can look at the message and you can see whether it's a tribal message or an individualist message. An individualist message is always about the human, the individual, the rights and obligations of the person. A tribal message is always about a group. And unfortunately, those sorts of messages are much more common on the internet, which is something we haven't spoken about, but you might ask yourself, why isn't the Enlightenment ideology in decline? And one of the possible causes is the spread of the internet. If you do I still have time to go into that?
Yeah, of course you do.
Yeah. Please
okay.
do, yeah.
Well, I mean, the way I think about it is that the Enlightenment was based on the optimistic assumption that human beings can be reasonable, tolerant, rational, and sort out their problems, like John Stuart Mill argued. But what really happened is that only a very small group of highly educated people got to have a say in the last 300 years, because the media was the domain of people who were well educated, who were reasonable, and who by and large were capable of functioning according to the requirements of the enlightened person. What the internet does is that suddenly everybody has a podium, everybody has a forum, everybody can say whatever they think. And furthermore, they can find people who think like them and only listen to them and only speak to them. And that's a new development. And it's possible that the fact that the communication is no longer the domain of the privileged few, but is now open to everybody, may yet come to show that Plato was right, that people, if they are all allowed to have a say, will not be very good in running a democracy. And that's a worrying concept. So in other words, you could almost say that our technological progress, the amazing evolution that we created, might be the beginning of our own undoing.
Psst. I'm just going to do a little circuit breaker here and say thank you for listening to us. If you love the show, let us know. Hit the subscribe button on your podcast app and show us those 5-star ratings. Remember to tell your friends about us and check our Patreon page for access to even more content, like extended interviews at patreon.com/reframe of mind. The more people we get talking about mental health, the more supported we'll all be.
Every time I hear a replay that we do with Joe Forgas, even bits that I wasn't originally calling Joe Bombs end up being Joe Bombs. Like
the gift that keeps on giving.
When we were editing up Joe to put the storyboards together for the episodes, I actually didn't think that the idea of democracy failing was going to be a Joe Bomb that would come back in. But here we are in 2022, that makes me think of the stuff that's going on in Ukraine, like democracy literally under attack. And I think
literally under attack.
Literally under attack. And Joe Bombs keep on giving.
They present in all sorts of ways because, like we've had conversations with people who've said just because they're going through X doesn't mean that your little x is any less important because it's all contextual. So, like, if we bring the Joe Bomb back to the context of us trying to attract clients, for example, in our very early days with our shiny little episodes called Elevating Experts, available for an increasingly limited time on Welcome Change Media's website.
Yeah, we're very quick to judge that. I'm very quick to shit on that, as I think you said earlier in the episode or earlier in the week when I said something about I said to
many a dump has been laid.
I said to our new mentor, I said, elevating experts, that was a failure, wasn't it? Like, And she's like, no, they're really good. And I'm like, nah, failed. And you're like, don't shit on it. I'm like,
Finally, I had an ally that didn't think it was shit.
and I'm just there and I'm shitting on it again today, Andy. I'm shitting on it again now.
Elevating experts.
You know, I mean, you're both right. They are good, but they didn't work the way that we wanted them to work. The old imposter came knocking at our doors. Hello.
Hello.
Hello. Mumsy.
Hello.
Hello, Mumsy.
Ooh. Hello, I'm imposter.
Imposter does, sound like a lot like my mum in this, though. Imposter came knocking and said,
"Why would you promote yourselves as a..."
Excuse me, imposter needed to knock first.
Sorry.
Imposter came knocking and said,
"Why would you promote yourselves as available to provide those services when you can't even get this right?"
Oh, ouch.
Yeah, that's all old trauma that we don't need to bring up with our psychologists anymore, but how does it present for us now and in other ways?
Well, apparently I still need to bring it up with our mentor this week, so it can't be that old trauma.
She's not a psychologist, though, so you know.
I suppose it's about our perceptions, isn't it, though? Like how we're viewing ourselves.
So these perceptions of how we are, you know, like others would view me as oversensitive in ceasing contact with a family member that I've spoken about in previous episodes and through the timeline of this story. You know, it started out with my dad dying and then some problems within the family, and a part of that was a relative who said some pretty awful stuff to me. Yeah. But there is an opinion amongst some ranks that, you know, I'm just oversensitive, you know, like it'll blow over, it's water under the bridge, that kind of stuff. But those people at the time weren't across the full details of what was actually said because I actually chose to self-delete. I chose not to disclose those details of that interaction. So in effect, that other person's opinion of me isn't relevant. And I don't feel that the specifics of that really are anybody's business, because what they said to me is what they said. And the action I took was to say, well, if that's how you feel about me, then sayonara. It's not a school punch-up that I'm inviting people to, you know, grab the popcorn for. It's not something that I'm looking to get, you know, a gang of allies for or anything like that. It's done, you know, like I sincerely don't regret stopping that relationship. You know, it was a sad but necessary end to really what was an abusive relationship.
Yeah.
You know, I mean, there have been suggestions that maybe down the track I should reconcile or forgive and forget.
Yeah.
You know, it's family. That ignores a part of the story that really isn't their business to know. For my own well-being, for a long time I wasn't prepared to explore it. I have since. We've talked about it at length.
We've talked about it.
My therapist and I have talked about it, and, you know, other people that I'm close to, I've talked about it to get my own bearings on the situation, and I've made my peace with it. So I hadn't been prepared to explore it for a long time, but I did. And the conclusion that I came to is the one that remains.
Turning that mirror on yourself, it's easy to blame somebody else, isn't it?
It is.
So easy to blame somebody else, but how long do you stay the victim? How long?
Yeah, that's right.
Yeah.
There's got to be a boundary somewhere.
Yeah.
You know, I'm not out to go out and lay blame or, you know, I mean, there were interactions over the years where I was equally as culpable, and I'm not proud of that. But also, I don't feel like that there's an opportunity to have a proper two-way conversation about that where blame wouldn't come back onto me. I'm not interested in laying blame, but I'm also not interested in carrying all the blame either.
I think that's a really good distinction, that it's, you know, don't carry the blame yourself or either. Don't use that to torture yourself. Don't shit on elevating experts every week because you're blaming yourself for it not working out. Oh, wait, I'm talking about me.
So let's come around to the perceptions you've held about yourself and your value, because when you left that radio gig, after 20 years in radio, you know, you got to a position of success. You were in a metro market and you were quite popular, but then you come into doing this kind of stuff now, and how did you feel?
I can jokingly shit on elevating experts. Because I have to make it a joke, because otherwise the truth is that it hurts, right? Like that I made something that I think didn't work, and it says that they were right. It says that anybody who didn't believe in me, or anybody who laughed at the idea that, you know, I could have a business making content, then maybe they were right. That it backs up that kind of fear inside of me that maybe I made a mistake.
Can I put my logic hat on for a minute?
No, this is my trauma hat, my
I know.
illogic hat.
I know, but to come out of a career where you had a machine behind you with hundreds of people working in a whole network for the success of the programs and the history of that station and the history of that network, to come into a situation where you're starting a business from scratch and making content and nobody knows about it because you haven't got the power of that marketing machine behind you, it seems odd that you could see that as a failing on your part.
Yeah, but I think it probably seems odd as an outsider that I could be those things that you're saying that I was. Number one morning announcer in a capital city, Australia's third largest market, and still feel like a failure. Like that wasn't enough. Like I was still worthless and had no value.
Yeah.
Because I left that job feeling that I was worthless. And wasn't valued and didn't value myself. And when I wanted to start something for us, I think, we could have started, or I could have started, Welcome Change Media years before I ever did, because I can remember talking to a friend about this kind of concept that I wanted to do. This is the kind of story I want to tell. This is the kind of connection I want to make with people. I want to be honest and authentic, and I want to be able to do things that matter to me and hopefully will help other people who, if I can put my story out there, as difficult as that might be sometimes, that I know because of the skills that I've earned and maybe the natural talent that I have, that it'll be able to connect with people, and it might be able to make things easier for people in ways that I didn't have it easier for me. And so I could have started. I recognized that years before we did this, and so I could have done it then. Instead, I have a shed full of jewellery that is in little plastic boxes. I suppose even the jewellery business was a bloody distraction from the things that really mattered, because the jewellery business as well was, I need a backup plan because one day radio is not going to work for me, and then what am I going to do? So maybe if I start a little jewellery business, like it'll be enough cash that I can survive when it doesn't work for me anymore, and then I can work on something else. I can work on the thing that really matters. And I didn't put those pieces together until now.
Yeah.
So, giving up on the jewellery, I suppose at that same time was giving up on that idea that if I could make something that actually matters to me. Because there's a really big fear in that, is that if I tell people about the things that I'm doing, if I make something that really matters to me and they tell me that it's shit or they don't listen to it, that hurts and it sucks, because I'm actually doing something that I truly care about. And so I think I shit on Elevating Experts because it was a first attempt that we did to do something for us outside of a model that I'd had. Yeah, because I think it didn't work because it
didn't get the outcome we wanted.
Because it didn't get the outcome that we wanted. I think it's easier to make fun of that than to admit how much that hurts. Because the truth is, I still feel inadequate. I could sit at the top of the thing that you call success and, feel inadequate because it wasn't good enough. I didn't make it far enough in that career. I never ended up on the billboard. I didn't make it to the top. We didn't earn the audience and dollars starting Welcome Change Media and Elevating Experts that I hoped for in the first few months. And I thought, give it 6 months and then we'll be having we did the spreadsheet. We did the magical spreadsheet. I think.
We did the spreadsheet.
By month 6, we were we were bringing in $200,000 a month by.
Oh my God, we were so rich.
Month 6. Yeah. Spoiler alert: we did not. We did not.
No, nowhere near it. But anyway, it was fun. It was fun to dream because dreaming is free, as somebody wisely said in a sketch earlier in today's episode.
I mean, I didn't mean to bring this part down. I think this was a part of the episode where we say that, we're going to take other people's perceptions out of it. I don't know that we can take other people's perceptions out of it until we acknowledge how much those perceptions have affected our perceptions of ourselves without going very matrix meta on this concept.
Well, it comes back to that whole thing of, we don't live in a vacuum.
Don't live in a vacuum.
We, both of us, before we started Welcome Change Media, had only ever worked for other people. Yeah. We'd only ever kind of moved up whatever ranks we were in those jobs. Mm-hmm. We had something to be able to use as a reference point, whether it was coaching from a leader or feedback from staff to kind of guide
KPIs.
us. We had KPIs.
We had KPIs set by somebody else.
We could tell if we were on the right path because we knew, okay, well, there's the mark we're aiming for. Got it. Or, oh, well, we missed it, but maybe that was because of this or that. And when you're starting your own business, who's making the KPIs?
Mm-hmm. Yes. No one's making the KPIs. And so unless you make the KPIs, my inner imposter, inner perfectionist probably maybe made realistic KPIs with you, but secretly had her own set of KPIs that was like, it's going to do this and it's going to do that. And we're going to have, $200,000
Always
a
knew you
month.
were working against me.
We're going to make heaps of money and we're going to have heaps of listeners and fuck everybody that didn't believe in me. But we don't live in a vacuum.
No, we don't.
However, the positive in this is that we might not have found the success in that I would have hoped for to be enough to call it success, even though now I wonder where that line in the sand is, because I feel like probably wouldn't matter what I did, I'm going to default to it's not good enough, honestly. Like, it's probably my default setting that I have to work on. But what did come out of that series is that we were able to connect with people. We were able to learn and perfect the craft of what we do. It also was a bit of a giant distraction for us, right?
Well, yeah, but also, there are other ways to get paid other than money, and money's probably king when it comes to paying bills, I've got to say.
I love that quote. Suzanne gave us that quote, that there's other currencies than money.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think, the big currency out of Elevating Experts was that we really became good at putting episodes together. We became really good at drafting things, of batching things, of getting things done in batches so that we could then free up time for the next thing. And the next thing, and the next thing. So it gave us a lot of things, and a lot of those things actually became themes in episodes themselves. So, that's why I prefer not to shit on Elevating Experts.
Is it?
You fertilise it any way you like.
I will. No, look, it's actually good. It's a good series. It's just maybe it was the right series at the wrong time. Yeah. Maybe we worked on that because we were afraid to work on this, because we were afraid to put our vulnerability, and if we could sit on a podcast like we told Hugh that we did and not release Elevating Experts because we were afraid that people wouldn't like it. God. All we were doing was trying to give people pointers on how to use a microphone, etc., etc. Then we needed to go through that experience to get ourselves to the point where we could release Reframe of Mind, where
Bearing Our Souls,
where we sit here for 2 hours and tell you about the deepest, darkest, deep secrets and put this out in the world.
Yeah, and I think, along the way we used the excuse of, well, look, we're still interviewing for Reframe. It's going to take a while. We just need to focus on this a bit longer. We could have actually started storyboarding well before we did. We could have been doing a lot. This probably could have been released probably a good 3 or 4 months earlier than it actually started. In my honest opinion, IMHO.
Yeah. Is that what that stands for?
Yeah.
IMHO.
IMHO, in my honest opinion.
Oh, my God, I'm old.
I can't believe you don't know that. I can't believe I knew that and you didn't.
Maybe it goes back to ICQ, like BRB. No one uses that anymore.
Maybe. Well, they don't. But you see, no one uses LFMAO anymore.
Including Redfoo. I suppose the good thing about Elevating Experts is because hardly anyone listened, no one actually shat on it with their words except for me. So
and we can recycle the shit out of it.
We're going to release that sucker under another name and you guys are going to be like, wow, this is great new content. I love this.
Wow. Yeah. The funny thing is with these perceptions that we have brimming over the edge from ourselves, it almost becomes like self-fulfilling prophecy, because then people you start to hear those very thoughts and words echoed in the people around you.
And you start to attribute your failures to those there was a time where I would have said to myself, Elevating Experts failed because I was fat. And you see how ludicrous that is.
That's quite the leap.
But there was a time, I reckon, a version of me would have blamed something not working on being a fat girl.
Well, same for me, I sounded too gay,
girl.
so therefore it wasn't any good because I sounded too gay. Can't sound too gay. Sorry.
Sorry.
I'll try not to sound too gay. So, I suppose the bottom line is that we just really need to take a good hard look at ourselves and stop listening to these stupid bloody things that have entered our psyche over all of these years and decades. You know, like we've got to find a way to smash through those limiting beliefs. We've got to find a way to recognise them.
Whether they came from somebody else, whether they still come from somebody else, or whether we picked up something that somebody else told us and ran with it and turned it against ourselves as a weapon. Got to let it go. None of it is helpful.
As the Bee Gees once sang, it's only words.
I mean, that reference is even older than the tidy trays.
And it's older than both of us combined.
Someone else we've spoke to in this series, CEO and founder of La Joie Skin, Daphne Kapitas, she told us about her own courage and strength when she faced other people's words.
And Daphne, in her true storytelling way, gave us advice like only Daphne can.
I'm not going to allow anybody to make me hate them.
Yeah.
And my mum would say that to me too. There's ancient Greek sayings that say whether somebody hates you or they love you, what you don't want is for them to feel sorry for you, right?
Yes.
Okay.
Because whether someone hates you or not, it's really not it's not our business. It's
not our business.
It's their business.
But, okay, and what they say about me is also none of my business.
Yeah.
Okay. At the end of the day, if you don't like me, seriously, switch off. Don't listen. I don't focus on the way I'm looking to them. I focus on learning my content. So I'm standing up there now in front of all these young students, and yes, I'm a mum, and I have a mother who's dementing. This was just before her diagnosis of frontal temporal dysfunction of the brain, so it wasn't a great time for me. But I was focused on getting my content right, focused on me, focus on your own stroke. So when you are rowing, you focus on your own stroke, and that's how you propel forward. When you're on a bike and you're cycling, you have to focus on where you're going, because if you don't, you fall off. So like all the different activities that I've done where as a dancer, when you're performing in a group, you have to focus on your routine. I can't focus on what someone else is doing. I can see you from a peripheral vision, but I'm not going to look at you front on. So I stood up in front of everybody, a lot older than all of them, and I focused on my content. My personality came out and I did well. So, I think it's a matter of saying I've only got one life. I'm going to make sure that I live it each day. And like I said, my goal every day is to be happy. And my happiness comes from setting myself goals and wanting to learn something new.
So had Daphne listened to those voices that were jeering early on, she might not have had the successful career that she's had. I mean, she's a CEO and founder. She's had, I think it was an Amazon hot list product, like huge deal.
Daphne's been places. She's worked internationally, and she is one successful woman.
She did design perfumes for was it Carla Sampati, I think. Daphne has
she's worked with some names. Yeah,
Daphne
she worked
has done
for
lots of cool stuff.
Bayer. She worked for the Bayer Group because they do all of the chemicals, the esters for the perfumes and stuff. Like she's pretty switched on, is our Daph.
Yeah, and if not for the naysayers, Daphne told us that she might not have been able to use their energy to fuel her wonderful life.
At the time when I walked in there, because bearing in mind, I'm a dancer, I want to perform. I love fashion. I'd walk in there with red suits, red nail polish and black hair, and they used to call me the nanny. Of course. Okay.
Awful.
Right? Awful. But like the nanny. You know the nanny? Did you remember the nanny on television?
Yeah.
Okay.
You forget Fran
right?
Fine.
Which is fine. I didn't care, right?
Yeah.
But the lecturers were like, you don't look like a scientist. You don't conduct yourself like a scientist. You need to wear safety shoes. You're wearing high heels. Okay, so you know what? They won the safety shoe debate. Yes, they did. I ended up wearing safety shoes in the labs, but I didn't take off my flamboyant red suits. In the end, I would give them my assignments and they'd say, who helped you do that? Because they assumed that being the way I was, that I didn't have brains. Do you see these prejudices? It's silly.
Yeah.
Like I didn't fit in the scientific norm. It's just silly. It's limiting on their part, not on mine.
Yeah.
But in the end, and I remember once there was a subject called reaction kinetics, which is physics and chemistry, and one of the guys next to me said, you'll never pass this one. It's a 15% pass rate. Now, that is enough to drive me mad, okay? Tell me that I can't do something, and then I go, thank you for that. That's exactly what I needed. I needed you to tell me that I can't do that. Now watch me. Now I never go back to the people. I never go back to these people to say, gee, thanks for that. Because of you, I got 95%. And I remember the lecturer walking in saying, Daphne Demetriadis, reaction kinetics, stand up, 95%. I blitzed it. I couldn't believe it. But I never told anybody that behind the scenes my brain was hemorrhaging from okay. But it's like any performer. No performer tells you how hard the rehearsals were. When you go and watch somebody perform, you're mesmerised by what they are doing, how they're entertaining you, how they're taking you to a different place. It's exactly the same thing. They don't sit back telling you just how hard this was to make this performance look as great as what it was. The same was this. I didn't tell anybody. So when I finished from UTS and my science degree, the first year I worked as a chemist for Avon, which was quite a big skincare beauty company at that time. And then after a year, I was offered a positioning lecturing chemistry at university to the engineers. And again, I didn't change. They actually also made me student representative. And I never changed to fit into their norm of what a scientist is supposed to look like.
Like BJ Thomas would say, words don't come easy.
Was that BJ Thomas? I thought he was Raindrops on the Head.
Who was words then?
Something, it'll come to me.
Not easy. It won't come easy.
Words. Well, it's not coming easy.
It wasn't the
D. Something.
It wasn't the Bee Gees.
It wasn't the Bee Gees. No. It was something, and the second name was like a letter.
It was F.R. David.
F.R. David. I knew there were letters in there somewhere. F.R. David.
Like F.R. David would say in another dated reference for this show, even older than the Bee Gees and Tidy Trays.
More dated references than your grandmother's will.
As F.R. David would say, I never did put that ghost dog in the show notes. I'm sorry. I forgot about Ghost Dog in the show notes.
Oh, you did. We've got a lot of disappointed listeners. That's why our listeners have dropped.
That's why they don't come back. That words don't come easy, especially words that you're reclaiming, like fat.
Yeah, that's a word that a lot of people don't enjoy. There's a word that I say that you don't enjoy.
I know there is.
And I use it self-referentially when I call myself a poofter.
I hate it.
I know you do.
I hate it. I hate the.
Why do you hate it? Why do you hate? What's your relationship with poofter? Because I mean, if anyone's going to have a relationship with the word poofter, it's going to be the poofter.
Because I think it's something that's been wielded as a weapon, and
it has.
Awful.
Okay.
Yeah.
So let me take you back to 1995.
Into the hot tub shame machine.
Yeah, the hot tub shame machine. So, and I'm not saying this is particular to this era, but with reference to this word, I'd be sitting around in, say, the Albury down in Sydney. It was a great pub. We used to love going to the Albury.
You've mentioned it before. You must have really enjoyed it.
I know. I did. I really, really love the atmosphere there. It's a clothing store now. Anyway, but I'd be sitting around there with my poofter mates and, some dyke friends, and we'd be having a conversation, and we'd be using those words freely because we were reclaiming those words for ourselves. But if somebody from outside came and called us those things, that wasn't okay. But if you know me, it's quite okay for us to have banter, to call ourselves certain things, because it takes the hurt away from the word. In reclaiming that word, they can't hurt me with it anymore. It's still not okay for them to call me that because they're not my mate, and they're calling, it's the intention. So you say that you have a problem with the word because it's been used as a weapon, and that's right. Completely agree with that. The way I've reclaimed it for myself and used within the people with whom I'm familiar, and again, it's not with everybody with whom I'm familiar, because that relative of mine that said awful things to me at the start of the series would use that word in a derogatory fashion at me, for example. Or that's probably a bit harsh because I don't know whether they actually used it at me, but they would certainly use it at other people.
Yeah.
And I know that because I've heard their offspring use that word in reference to other people, and I had to pull them up on it. Words are used as weapons, but also it's possible to reclaim that for yourself so that you de-weaponize it.
Yeah.
Because if I go through life fearing the word poofter all my life, then to me that feels silly because it's a word. It's the intention behind the words people use. People could call me anything else that seems innocuous to somebody else, but it could still be slanderous, or it could be something that is a weapon as well. So I think it's a much bigger conversation. When I call myself poofter, I'm joking, like I'm actually just saying, oh yeah, well, I was a fat poof when I was at school. I'm a fat poof now. Woohoo.
I think I suppose a similar relationship around the word fat, because there's a lot of people in the fat community who are, happy to claim the word fat. Fat is just something that you have. It's not who you are. It's a literal descriptor for something. So a lot of people are quite happily, hashtag fat positive, hashtag, fat girl summer, all those things. And
which I felt really uncomfortable about when I saw, I'm seeing people labeling themselves as fat, which was a derogatory term that I even copped when I was younger.
Yeah. Similar situation. I am happy to reclaim that. I take it back because you're right. Like, I'm fat. So what? Like, and I think you're going to agree with this. After a lifetime of having something hurled at you like that, it's just, who gives a fuck? Like, fine.
Well, it's almost like, you want to call me poofter? Call me fucking poofter. What else do you want to call me? Go on. What else do you want to say?
Come up with something better than that, because if you come onto my Instagram and you go, you're fat, I mean, yeah, I fucking am.
Yeah.
You're not trying.
And?
At least, put in some effort.
In fact, probably some of the meta words that were put in for, like the alt text with some of the Instagram posts probably include the word fat.
Mm-hmm. Interesting that you also felt uncomfortable when we first started working together in this, because I've been working with that kind of body positive, body neutrality, fat acceptance space for years, because as the earlier stories, I was a little fat girl, and I have done still a fat girl, have done a lot of work in actually going, hang on, the way that my body is doesn't have to reflect the way that I feel about myself, and I don't have less worth because I have more weight. A number on a scale isn't actually reflective of my worth as a human.
If you're going to treat somebody differently because they're fat, you might as well treat someone differently because they're black, or because they're a woman, or because of any of these other things. Oh,
but they
hello.
Do. Yeah.
Exactly. So it's
just
the
another way
intention
to other
behind
people.
the word. It is. Yeah.
And unfortunately, I think that, things like homophobia is better. It is not gone. It is better. But things like fat phobia is still very much acceptable to participate in the diet culture and, label someone who's fat as lazy, and it's not, you could report those comments on social media till the cows come home as harassment, and they never get taken down because it doesn't breach a policy to call someone out on their body. But if you made I suppose a joke about homosexuality at this point and be like, well, no, that is absolutely discriminatory, and they'll take it down.
Yeah, it's recognised. It's a recognised category.
It's a recognised category. And I don't think that body shaming is there yet. And that's not even, it's a whole other series talking about body shaming, because it's not just fat bodies, it's all bodies. So, especially anybody who is othered in any way, and basically nobody's body is anybody's business except for the person in that body.
It's their body, and they get to present it and to do whatever they wish with it.
Not even whatever they wish with it. It gets to be however it bees.
Yeah. Oh, well, when I say to do whatever they wish with it, like you said with the swimsuits, wouldn't it have been nice to do whatever you wished and actually get in a goddamn swimsuit and learn to swim and to actually enjoy the water like people do?
Well, now I do. Now I'm a fatty that takes her fucking fat self to the beach in a bikini, and fuck you. Do you know what? No one died. No one died from that. Fatty on the beach in a bikini? Nah, fine.
Yeah.
You know what happened? You know what the worst that happened was? Fucking nothing, because people are gutless and don't say it to your face.
Yeah. So we talk about reclaiming these words, which has a power in itself.
It does.
But also within that, not everybody has permission to use those words for us.
No.
So it comes down to familiarity, and it comes down to permission, and it comes down to knowing people. There are very few people that I mix with now that would probably even use the word like I and my friends of that era use it or used it. If I meet someone from that part of my life, we might have a bit of a joke about it, call each other an old poof or something, but that's that's just us. I don't hear so much of that now, and that's okay. Like that was my generation.
Yeah.
Current generations have got different words they're claiming for themselves, and I think it's important for people to be able to do that and to respect that as well, because it's not about, they've reclaimed it, we can use it again. No, fuck off. Like, you don't get to call me a poofter because I've actually de-weaponized it. If you still want to use it as a weapon, you're still a bastard.
Yeah, exactly.
There's nothing good in that, so piss off. If I'm actually choosing to call myself certain names, in jest or whatever, it is in jest now. Like, I'm not actually being self-deprecating as a punishment to myself or to get attention or to say to people, you need to pity me because I've been ostracized or whatever. Like, I've been through that. I've dealt with those traumas. I've actually come out the other side of it alive, thankfully, because a lot of people don't. And that's the great tragedy. These words do hurt, and by reclaiming it, I stopped them hurting. A lot of people don't get to that stage.
It's a way that we can work with ourselves to break the hold of somebody else's perception. Because people who are fat phobic, whether they say it or not, still hate fat people, whether we stop them from saying the word or not. People who are homophobic, they still don't like gay people, whether it's discriminatory or not.
It doesn't stop them from thinking it.
It doesn't stop them from thinking it. So the power has to be, what can we do as individuals to not take it on, to let go of their perceptions of us, to stop letting their perception of us influence the way that we're going to live our lives and how we're going to feel about ourselves and our own self-worth.
When it comes down to it, we just need to find a way to stop listening to those voices.
Like, imagine for a minute if someone we spoke to in episode 6 of the series, Nathan Parker, who was actually New South Wales Young Australian of the Year 2021, had listened to the voices of doubt around him, because Nathan always had this dream that he wanted to fly planes. And then he was involved in a bus crash, had his arm pinned under the bus, almost died. His hand had to be amputated, which a lot of people could have come along and said, and probably did, mate, you're not going to fly now.
Yeah. And I'm sure there were plenty of people around to support that particular narrative, but in his own way, Nathan got through it and he pushed through that, which he told us about.
I already felt at that point that I'd lost that childhood dream twice, and I couldn't afford to sort of walk away. At the end of the day, when the chips are down, I couldn't walk away from flying without sort of working out what was possible, because I had this gut feeling deep down that I knew in 10, 15 years' time I'd be kicking myself that I didn't give it a shot and see what was possible. So for me, it was very obvious that at that point in time, at that crossroads, there was a very strong pull towards, no, you need to give this a go. And given that you've already potentially lost it twice over, give it one last shot and see what is possible. But I think it's definitely a challenge. It's particularly these days with so many different things that are going on for so many of us, it's hard to narrow down what is it that we're passionate about and how do we find our passion, how do we pursue our passion. And that's something that I've been very lucky throughout my life to have had a very clear passion from the start.
Is that what fueled you when people said that you won't fly again? It wasn't so much proving them wrong, but following your own gut on that they were wrong?
Yeah, I think for me it was about seeing what was possible. I knew deep down, I had a sense deep down that I think I can still do this. And I was very lucky along the way to have so many incredible people give me opportunities to try and see what was possible. But I mean, even thinking back to my hospital room, one of the first things that went up on the wall in my room was a picture of the fighter jet that I had always hoped to fly. And even in those tough times when I'm struggling to put food in my mouth, with only one hand, I'd look up that and think, I've got to do this to start moving towards that goal. And there was no guarantees that I'd get back there. And unfortunately, I wasn't able to pursue that dream in the long run. But at that point in time, that passion, that dream, and that goal gave me that inspiration, that motivation to keep pushing through no matter how hard things got.
And for some more evidence, not only is it that we don't need to listen to these perceptions, also we just need to understand that that's all they are, perceptions. They're not facts.
Yeah, absolutely. And Professor of Entrepreneurship at La Trobe University, Alex Moritz, we spoke to way back in episode 7, I want to say.
Even we're forgetting now.
I know. But he made the observation, when talking about senior entrepreneurs.
So how do we change that narrative that is that public perception? What do you think are the steps to do that? Like the story of the 1% of the people in the garage, that's the flashy one. How do we change that narrative to talk more about this, to empower people who may have said, I can't do that, I'm too old?
Well, we try to get it out there at Seniorpreneurs. It's a non-for-profit. So we're trying to get that thing out there that's saying, these late career transitions to self-employment are possible. We've got case studies. We've got the research already to show that this is the case, that over 30% of all entrepreneurs in Australia are senior entrepreneurs. It's the highest growing sector. So we've got a lot of this data to support this notion.
And female economy expert Jacinta Carboon can see the value in the female economy, so why can't everybody else?
Women make up 50% of our population, and the number of women graduating from university actually outstrips men. And so we're actually, by not making the most of women in just as an example, in an employment situation, we're not making the most of the talent that we have there to make better decisions about business. And by not also, on another line, by not actually engaging women in business as much as we could and should, we are getting better, but it's still got a long way to go. We're not having influence on the way that we produce products and services. So we're actually really tailoring, not necessarily tailoring them to the market. A lot of, as I mentioned before, a lot of the way that businesses have been set up is with men in mind, and the way that products and services are being designed and marketed and delivered is with a male perspective as opposed to a female perspective. So we're not actually delivering services for 50% largely, in a lot of instances, for 50% of the population. So from an economy, from a GDP perspective, the figure is enormous. If we actually tapped into the talent out there, female talent that's not being tapped into, it could have an enormous impact on the wealth of our country.
So the antidote to being impacted by other people's opinions and perceptions is to question them by showing ourselves as much evidence to the contrary that we can.
Yeah, Hugh Kearns explained to us what the true value of feedback really is.
If our aim in the feedback is to improve people's performance or, to do that, what you need to do is be much more specific. It's not like vague things like it was good, but no. And again, asking for feedback, you probably go in and say, look, I'm unsure about this. How did this go? What did that go? How did you look at specific elements of it and so forth? So being much more clear. But I suppose, first of all, just be careful about asking for feedback at all. Are you genuinely asking, or are you going to then hone in on the negative parts? Like I'll give you an example in my line of work. I run workshops all the time, and certainly online in the last year or so. And let's say you have 100 people in the audience, given you're talking to them. And then at the end, sometimes you have evaluation forms or feedback forms. And, let's say 99 people say it was great and one person says that was rubbish. What are you going to focus in on for the rest of the day? The one person says it was rubbish, which is really unfair. And so what I do when I get that one rubbish one, what I do is I go and look at the 99 good ones and I go, that person's weird. They're wrong. Because otherwise you focus in on the negatives. And so that's why one of the strategies I talk about in other workshops and books, whatever, is having what I call a brag file or a fact file. And a brag file means all the evidence about things that have gone well, when you've done well and so forth. So that then when you do get that one negative, you can go and look at the evidence and go, hang on, most people thought it was good. So that's one. And again, in your case with your podcast, hopefully you get lots of positive feedback. Inevitably, you'll get a few people saying, no, it didn't work for me. It wasn't so good. And what you need to go is look at all the good ones and say, hang on, most people thought it was pretty good. And so that balances up those. And so, and we're not good at doing that on the cuff or naturally. You have to actually have things written down to see the evidence, because our brain will focus in on that one negative one and we forget about all the good stuff.
So we don't have to care about other people's opinions.
No, we can choose to care about them if they support us, but we can kick the ones to the curb that tear us down.
Even if they're our own?
Yeah, particularly if they're our own.
even if they come from your business partner and co-host and they're about elevating experts?
I'm still working on it. It's still raw.
So here's our brag file then, because I love this idea of a brag file on where we're currently at on our journey.
Okay, so we have published 4 podcast series.
Mm-hmm. 4.
4.
4.
Can you name them? Elevating Experts, That Entertainment Podcast.
Oh, wouldn't it be 5 though? Because we've done That Entertainment Podcast Brisbane and That Entertainment Podcast Adelaide.
It's kind of cheating.
and we did Willow Tree Manor, and we did publish that tiny snippet of Brizzleade in Reframe of Mind.
So technically it's 6, I suppose, if you want to look at it that way.
And then we did that one episode of Worst Podcast Ever that no one actually knows about. Yeah.
Yeah, exactly.
Another. Yeah.
But the serious ones, I'm happy to say 4. Because, there was a Brisbane edition, but it was all a part of the same thing. Anyway, next.
We've published over 50 podcast episodes across our network of programs.
We have indeed. We've got regular listeners. Hello.
Hello. And it's definitely not 0 and it's not declining.
Yeah, despite what I said earlier, it's not declining.
It's not declining. It's actually inclining. No, that's not the opposite, is it? It is, I suppose, but it doesn't fit, does it? Increasing.
Doesn't really.
It's increasing. For some reason, people keep giving us good reviews, which is amazing feedback.
Thank you. Please leave one now. Please go to in your app. Okay, so I'm going to make a big assumption here and say most people listen via Apple Podcasts.
Well, I mean, I
might be right or might be not. I know. So, but I know quickly how to do the rating on the Apple Podcasts. If you go to the actual series, not the episode, the series for Reframe of Mind, and scroll down past all the episodes, you'll see where you can rate it. And that's where you can leave your 5-star rating and say how much you love us. Anyway.
And apparently you can do the same thing on Spotify, but they don't actually publish you. I don't know why. Why do they publish?
Spotify, why?
Okay, so we've had amazing feedback. That's good. Yep, tick.
Thank you. Oh, that's it?
I'm so tired.
And we've also made some connections as well through podcasting as well. So we've got some people who have, come along and supported us on our journey in one way or another.
From every prop we've sent out, we've not had a single no. I mean, we did have some ghosts, but they didn't say no. They just didn't say anything. I said I wasn't going to shit on us. I think you need to take over, Andy. I'm clearly shitting on us.
Here's one for you.
Okay.
That you can't shit on because you'll be shitting on yourself.
Oh, well, I'm still happy to do that.
Louise, that's you, has managed to overcome her anxiety of going into places she once went to in her old role.
Actually.
And used to feel confronted by.
That's a big thing because remember I couldn't go past the gate when we started working together.
I know.
I didn't go very far past the gate and now I can drive all around the place and shit on things all over the city.
Shitting all over Brisbane.
Yeah.
Look out for Louise Poole.
What about one for you then? You took yourself to a networking meeting, actually more than one networking meeting.
I know.
You went out and spoke to real people.
And I liked it.
Who even are you?
I don't know. I really don't know. Being a business owner makes you do strange things.
Kind of following on from the Louise went back to places that were causing massive anxiety attacks. The first time I hadn't been back into the city. I hadn't driven away that I used to drive to go to work it was probably a year. And then a publicist who still had my email wanted me to come out and do an interview you can find it on that entertainment podcast. It was for Come From Away. And you know what? Shout out to her in case she's listening. But, her name is Cinnamon. And that was the first invite that I had after I left commercial media, to come and do something. So I did those 2 interviews and she said to me at the end that it was really nice to hear me interviewing again because I always do such great interviews.
Oh, that's lovely.
I know. And I felt
really sweet.
I felt so valued. Not only did, she invite me there and she introduced me to other people that were there and she liked what I did. And anyway, thank you, Cinnamon. That actually, that's one of those cases of people maybe don't know how much
of an impact they've had. Yeah. I have definitely increased my confidence approaching and interviewing people again. So I can reach out to someone and say, hey, you want to have a chat? And feel quite okay about that. And I've reconnected with my love of editing. I love it.
You hated editing when we started. You
I
said,
did. I said, I hate editing. I don't want to do editing. I love it.
Yeah.
I love it. It's great.
Do you know what felt good? The first time that I hit play on that first episode of TEP, the one that I did, backstage at QPAC, and it got to the end and it said, that this is a Welcome Change Media production. And I'm like, we fucking own that. No one else.
That was pretty special.
No one else
I remember
owns
that
our
exact
ideas.
same feeling.
We own that. Even if no one listens, we fucking own it.
Woohoo. I would say something to put in our brag file is that both of us definitely have more skills than we had this time last year.
Oh, yeah. Like websites.
Yeah, I can put together scheduling documents.
Oh, we can both do graphics in Canva. And you know what else? I learned how to use Procreate, which is a digital art program, and made our Reframe of Mind art with multiple layers and my little Apple Pencil.
You bloody well love it.
I did, and I have enjoyed it. I've taken all those art skills that I used to have when I used to paint in Darwin, which I think we spoke about in the previous episode, and I didn't paint for ages. And I've adopted those, and I started doing digital art, and I really like it. Even though Andy didn't like the drawing I did of him, I did a drawing of Andy, and he's like, "Do I look like that?"
Maybe we should let the Patreons decide.
I'll put it up there with the ghost dog.
I mean, you were very offended at my reaction to it. I was trying to be nice.
Don't let other people's perceptions get you down. I mean,
But look, all of your other work I love. Clearly it's about me, not you.
He clearly had some terrible perceptions, but I said to myself, self, that fucker doesn't know what he's talking about. His face does look like that in real life. And then I removed his hair from the picture and I gave him funny lips, and I've left him like that ever since. And now every time I turn on my iPad and see his drawing that I spent hours on and he hated, he looks stupid.
You know, people never like the sound of their own voice or the look of their own face.
I know, we have an Elevating Experts episode about that no one's heard.
Because he shit all over it. We're better at networking than ever before, I would say. We're not hiding anymore, which is nice.
Yeah.
We have new people that we've met in the last 12 months that we're actually working with, which is lovely.
We've had new people we've met in the last week that we're actually working with. Hello.
I know. Hello.
People have been wowed by our presentations when we've propped them for businesses, even if they haven't bought anything from us. They've gone, that's a great presentation.
They have, yeah, and that's always lovely to get that feedback. Would be nice if they hadn't ghosted us, but but no. But I think that their feedback was sincere because you could see in their face that they actually really appreciated what we'd done.
Do you know what? And not on this list of things that we're reading from. Another thing that we're really, I think we should be really proud of is that one of those people who ghosted us like 6 months ago, we had the audacity to actually cold call them out of the blue like 2 weeks ago. I mean, they ghosted us again, to be fair.
Again.
They did ghost us again.
They double ghosted us because I sent an email as well.
Now.
Yeah.
But
if we're going to shit on anything,
but
it's going to be on the people who ghost us.
For us to go, okay, we've been rejected and ghosted. Let's try again. Okay, we've been rejected and ghosted.
That's a pretty sassy move, really.
6 months later. Fuck it, we've been rejected and ghosted. Well, what harm can we have for trying again? I mean, sure, we've been rejected and ghosted again, but I think the audacity is something we should be proud of.
Yeah, I'm with you there, sister.
Yeah,
I think that audacity is definitely something that we've actually earned. We've earned that audacity. Finally, we can act like the middle-aged white man that we are.
We wrote that awesome complaint letter.
We did.
Still haven't received a complaint yet, though. So if you want a copy of that letter, feel free to complain about our content.
Feel free to complain. Exactly. You'll get it with a digital signature. We put together some pretty bloody efficient processes overall, I've got to say, I think, when it comes to that.
I mean, we're funny. Who would have thought we would have made a podcast about mental health and our deep, dark secrets and trauma funny?
I make people laugh because people laugh. And not at us.
And sometimes
well, maybe they do. Sometimes at us, but definitely people are laughing with us, which is nice. It's nice to be able to have a laugh.
I think we're open-minded and I think we're kind, just not to ourselves sometimes. Oh, sorry, that's just me I'm talking about again.
Shitting on yourself.
Shitting on myself.
Gotta take a dump, better be on myself. People can see that we genuinely want to help. That's the feedback that we get, you know, that we deliver this from the heart, and we do. We come into every episode wanting to share our personal story, and it's not because we want to do that to validate ourselves or to seek attention. It's because that we think that our stories really are no more special than anybody else's. I'm speaking for myself here, you know, like I think that the stories that we're telling could be the story of anybody, and the great shame is that a lot of other people who have these stories don't come out of it so well.
Yeah.
And, you know, if us sitting here doing what we do and saying what we say can help someone to not feel alone and to let someone know that actually I'm not the only one who's feeling like this, I feel like I've done something good.
And even going through this brag list, which could sound like, look at us, we're so good. I mean, it is a bit, look at us, we're so good. But
you got to pat yourself on the back, though, because there are plenty of people that won't.
And also, it might help you to see the things that you're doing that are good, because you don't have to have a $200,000 month to make a difference.
Yeah, absolutely. I look forward to our first $200,000 month.
Do you know what we did receive, though? An offer of dildos. Someone wanted to pay. This someone is a very large adult store, a very large corporate company who wanted to pay to have me talk about self-gratification, which is fine because I'm all about body neutrality. But
nothing against masturbation or anything like that.
But they wanted to pay us in dildos, not money. Can't take dildos to the bank. But, you know, at least we were offered compensation. So
hello, Origin Energy. Will you take a dildo for payment this month? No? Oh. Well, you have fun too. You scored an interview on somebody else's podcast because you had something interesting to say.
I did. Someone else cared what I had to say. What's this next one? I don't know what that is.
Well, that was the time that I actually arranged a meeting, which I would never have done 12 months before with somebody local.
You cold called somebody?
I cold called somebody and they said, yes, I'm happy to speak to you, as far as it went. But it's all about the process with some of this stuff, you know. As a salesperson, you can speak to dozens of people before someone connects with what you're selling. And it's not necessarily because you're just giving them a hard sell. It's because you build relationships with people and you actually then find out whether there's something useful in that relationship or not. Sometimes we stop ourselves from even getting to that point of conversation by saying we're not good enough. So for me to actually call this person and say, hey, I've got an idea, would love to have a chat to you about it, it was a really big deal and it was great, good experience. So I want to thank that person for, thanks Miles for having a chat.
Actually, I think that we have grown so much in the audacity to we've been creatives. We've been creatives. Well, I've been a creative all my working life. I've not actually been the one that's gone out and had to sell me. Someone else has sold my talent. And the audacity that we've had to take on this philosophy of, fuck it, we're just going to act like any other middle-aged straight white man and just, you know, expect the doors to open for us. I mean, it's a philosophy. It's not an easy philosophy because we have been, you know, ghosted a few times. But actually by doing that, by literally going, oh, you know what? I'm just as worthy as anybody else of this person's time and attention. We've landed some really big meetings with really big people. And, you know, like we have some upcoming projects at this point in time that could only come from us previously daring to have the audacity to approach people, being knocked back or ghosted, and instead of going, we failed.
I'll just go back to the shop.
I'm just going to just put the podcast in my shed next to the jewellery.
Yep.
We said
no. Get up and do it again.
Do it again. Do it again, because it's not always going to be no.
And this time we'll do it a little bit differently and see if that works. And if that doesn't work, we'll do it a little bit differently again.
So now we have client meetings on a regular basis.
I know. How was that? That's fun.
We have a mentee. Who would have thought?
Do. I know. And we have a mentor, which is lovely.
I'm on a board for mental health and fashion charity.
You are.
I'm a board member, thanks to...
You are a board member.
Jacinta saying, more women should get on boards. And I said, yes, more women should get on boards. And so I did.
And here's another woman on a board. So perfect.
Yeah.
Well done, you.
Thank you.
That's great. No, honestly, like that's a really big step for you personally and in your career.
Thank you.
Yeah. We were judges for the Australian Podcast Awards.
We were.
I could never have thought that I would have the audacity
to tell other podcasters how to do it.
Yeah, I know, but I did.
Okay. How about this one? One of my favourites. We, in our approach for guests for Reframe of Mind, approached a unidentified celebrity who
shall not be named,
who used to host a popular reality TV show. They said we would love to chat if
how amazing
you pay me.
Oh.
Because they thought we were successful enough to have money
to be able to pay them.
Like, bitch, we won't even pay ourselves.
We do present well. I've got to give us that.
Yeah. Okay. So, I mean, fake it till you make it. I mean, she obviously thought we'd made it. So
she did. I mean, we just gave away gender then, but
then, you know,
that person did.
That person did.
We've spoken to many more amazing people for the series as well. And it's really lovely to think that you're going to get to meet all of them as the season continues to unfold as well. Like it's, man, if you think that the guests we've spoken to so far are great, and they are, then there's more of the same caliber coming. So
you know what I love though is that we're choosing to focus on our mental health more. Genuinely, we're not.
Therapy Thursday.
Hey, let's do a podcast about mental health where we just talk to people about mental health, but then don't actually follow through with anything, and we're still fucked up 4 years from now. We're working on it. It's at the heart of what we're doing, of our business model, is actually tying professional growth and personal growth together.
And we're doing it. We're actually in the process. It's actually a process. It's not an end point. It's not get to the end of Reframe of Mind Series 1 and be cured of all of your mental health problems. No, because number one, the word problem is a problem. Number two, mental health's a journey. It's not a destination. You know, we need to make sure that we look after ourselves and take good care of ourselves and each other all the time. And
we don't live in a vacuum, Andy.
No, we don't.
I think, actually truly getting that concept for me has been a monumental part of this, because it's been easy for me in the past to beat myself up and say, I should do better than this in my mental health, blah, 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 blah. But actually to get to a point where I've recognised I don't live in a vacuum, and there are external things that are always going to influence me, and it's not about having the perfect skills all the time. It's about navigating the very real world that we live in with that.
Remember, I don't know if you can relate to this, but I remember when I was in some jobs as a leader, and I would go to training sessions, leadership training sessions, and that might run for a day or two. And within those training sessions, you get new skills, you'd feel great, you'd workshop it, you'd, role play it, and by the end of it, you'd feel fantastic. Yeah, I'm going to go out to the floor on Monday and do X, Y, Z. Get to the floor Monday and reality hits, and those same old unsupportive kind of actions, behaviours, beliefs, whatever, they all crop back up. And it was always felt so difficult to implement anything of value. And a lot of that's probably imposter syndrome as well. The thing here is that we're in the process, while we're talking through these things in these episodes. That's a very cute photo of your cat.
That's all right. Thank you. Thought I'd send you that. She's sleeping on the... She's sleeping on the near the desk where we're recording. Yeah.
Aww.
Put it in our Patreon next to that photo of you that you didn't like, the picture.
Okay. Done. I guess the point is we're actually exercising this along the way. So it's like a muscle that we're actually building as we go along. So we're having these conversations, but I'm also noticing actions that I do day to day now that support me in protecting myself. So there are things that I will now do and say to stand up for myself if I feel like somebody is acting inappropriately or speaking inappropriately to me. I don't let that slide anymore, and that is massively a part of all of the conversations that we've been having in making this. So I've had support and advice and that kind of stuff and counselling before and all that kind of stuff, but the point is, similarly with those training sessions at work, you get out of those sessions and then it becomes difficult to get traction with stuff like that. For me, the value in having these conversations is it becomes normal to talk about this kind of stuff, and then it becomes easier to then say something when something isn't right. Normalizing the conversation around mental health means that, I can go to a therapist and now I can actually start to think about more things to work on, if that makes sense, rather than going with a problem and focus on that for so long, because it takes a long time in that context for me to break down those kind of patterns and behaviours. But I suppose this has been a really long, protracted conversation about specific things, and what it's doing for me, this is about me. It's actually helping me to make different and better choices for myself. And I think that if we can normalise mental health conversations with each other in general, not just listening to a podcast or making a podcast, please go see a therapist, go see a psychologist or psychiatrist, because all of those things help. Talking about mental health in whatever context is really helpful. And if we can also normalise it in everyday conversation, then that will help us all to make better choices for ourselves and for each other.
And it's all about mental health. Like when people talk about mental health in a lot of contexts, I think they just mean it like we are only talking about mental illness. We're only talking about depression, anxiety, schizophrenia, bipolar, anything like that. But mental health is everything that we think and feel and how the world affects us and how we see ourselves in the world. And to think that the things aren't related is maybe naive and wishful thinking, because it's all related and it's all mental health.
It is.
And so kind of similarly, not on our list, but, I think off that as well, that one of the things I'd like to brag about is that probably for the first time in my life, I feel like I'm me and I'm living authentically. I'm not afraid to be me. I'm not holding anything back anymore. I'm comfortable having open and honest conversations with people, even when they're uncomfortable, in expressing boundaries. And remember a year ago, or, when we started working together, again, like how hard it would be for me to talk about anything emotional and be like, no, we can't talk about that. No, I don't want to talk about that. Like, I wanted to do a series about mental health, but I also kind of didn't want to talk about my own trauma or feel those things, because I'd made a life where I just kept swallowing down my own feelings. And now we can talk about things, and it's not just you. Like, I can talk about things with other people. I have other friends now. We spoke to the business mentor that we've found like 2 weeks ago, and I was telling her something, and we haven't even spoke to her all that many times, and I'm just telling her the honest truth, and then I start to cry about something. And these are emotions I repressed and could never have expressed 2 years ago. So if we get paid in other currencies than money, and we do get paid in other currencies than money, then putting our personal growth into the brag file is invaluable.
Yeah, it is. It's priceless.
Yeah, like MasterCard.
Speaking of which.
Priceless. So I hope that helps people put together their own brag file, because it doesn't always have to be skills, and it doesn't always have to be achievements that other people can see. It can be anything that matters to you. And,
even if you want to keep it private, which, you
don't have to tell anybody.
We haven't told anybody this brag file until
now
when we've just read through it. So apart from each other. So it's something that is for you, and it's something that you can take some pride in for yourself. And if you want to share it with somebody, if you've got a brag file of your own, or you want to make a brag file, we'd love to hear about it. We won't broadcast it, but if you feel confident sharing it with us, then we'd love to see it, because it's really important to acknowledge that great stuff as well. We talk a lot about the stuff that's brought us down over years, but there's a lot of good stuff too, and it's really important to shine a light on that, because if we don't, then we stay in the dark place.
So we're about a third of the way through our first chapter now in this story called Reframe of Mind.
Season 1.
I think the difference compared to when we started out is that we're now aware of the voices that have an impact on us. And how?
We've started choosing to believe in ourselves and our ideas now.
And we've connected with our own sense of self-worth and our own personal why.
So next time on Reframe of Mind, #1 best-selling small business author Andrew Griffiths helps us to understand the benefit of really valuing ourselves, and as business owners, charging what we're worth.
The challenge is often that a lot of people feel that they need to build a business that others expect them to build. And that can be where other people expect them to build a giant business or a big tech startup that they sell for $1 billion, or, to build a law firm, or to build this or build that. But it's not really what they want to do.
You've been hearing our story, and now we really want to hear yours.
Connect with @Reframe of Mind on Instagram, Facebook, TikTok and Twitter.
Or connect with @Welcome Change Media on LinkedIn.
You can also contact us via reframeofmind.com.au with your stories or suggestions for future topics.
We'd like to thank today's guests for sharing their personal stories and insights. For more information on any of the subjects, guests or references used in this episode, please see our show notes or reframeofmind.com.au.
Reframe of Mind is a Welcome Change Media production.